Welcome, everybody. How we all doing today? And we are ready to go to get things started in accordance with the Virginia Beach City Code 2-21 and by the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach. I hereby call for a special formal session of the Virginia Beach City Council on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026 at 1 p.m. City Council Conference Room 2034, Building 1, second floor, 2401 Courthouse Drive. We got a long address. The purpose of the special session is to allow the City Council follow a regularly scheduled formal session as listed in the attached agenda to convene into a closed session to consider the following matters. Publicly held property, District 2 and District 5, public contract, Project Pelican, personnel matters, council appointments, boards, commissions, cities, authorities, agencies, task force, and appointees. At the conclusion of the closed session, the city council will convene into an open session for the purpose of certifying the closed session. The special formal session will be broadcast on cable TV, virginiabeach.com, and Facebook Live. Sincerely, Bobby Dyer. Okay? And we're ready to go.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the first presentation will be given by Brent McKenzie, Director of Legislative Affairs. He's in Richmond. He's going to give City Council an overview of the General Assembly's actions and where we are in that process. So Brent, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. So today's briefing is going to cover status of our legislative agenda items, update on the budget that was released on Sunday by each chamber, and then we'll give you just a quick overview of where some of the legislation is post crossover that we are still working on and keeping an eye on. So that's what we'll kind of cover today. So on our legislative agenda items, hasn't been a ton of movement since last week. As you'll remember, most of our legislation had action taken on it prior to crossover, but since crossover, we have seen a couple of items. Our EMS 4 for Life funding legislation had passed the House 98-0 and was sent to the Senate. It was heard in Senate Transportation earlier this week and passed 15-0, but they re-referred it to Finance. We were trying to keep that from happening. It doesn't increase funding. It just changes how the funding is spent. But anytime legislation goes to the Finance Committee, it gets a little dicey. And so we were hoping that wasn't going to happen, but it followed the same pattern as the Senate version of this legislation did. So we've got some additional work to do on that piece of legislation. Later this afternoon, HB 390 from Delegate Askew is going to be heard in the Senate Agriculture Committee. We're expecting a positive result there, but we will see how that one goes. You will likely recall that as part of our original legislative agenda, we had an additional item that we had hoped to get legislation introduced on. Rather than seeking legislation, we decided to take it in a different route and try an administrative, result. And so this is just a quick update on that. So our friends at Dominion have really taken this project on. We owe them a debt of gratitude. They've done a great job with this. But on March 3rd, Dominion is going to go before the SCC Damage Prevention Advisory Committee to talk about creating a pilot program on using spot marking for utility markings at the oceanfront. So we've been working with them on this. This map here, the resort area SGA, is the area that we're proposing for this pilot program to take place. And the pictures to the right are some pictures that we've shared with Dominion and with the SCC just to demonstrate the challenges that we're seeing at our oceanfront with the markings and how we would like to try and reduce those impacts. So we're hoping that the SCC will look kindly on this request and create what would likely be a 1-year pilot program. And then we come back next year to see how it was working, how utility lines are being protected, how the spot marking is reducing the impacts of the markings and see if it's all working for both sides and see where to go from there. But this is nice progress, and we're hopeful that SCC will approve this. So as I mentioned last week and the beginning of my little ramble there today, each house released their budget this past Sunday. They really released like their budget summaries and summaries for each budget program. They haven't released the full details yet, and they haven't released all their half sheets. So there's likely some items in here that I don't have a ton of details on, and there are likely a few items that we just haven't seen yet as they haven't released all of the information. But this first slide are items that everything on here except for two items are things that we had listed in our legislative agenda and that we wanted to highlight for you. So the first item on the list is one of those two items that wasn't in our legislative agenda, but we definitely wanted to make sure that was highlighted for you guys. You'll recall that we had mentioned earlier in the year that Delegate Askew had put in a budget request of $10 million to support the Atlantic Park development. That was a request from the developers themselves, not from the city, but that the city would likely be used as a pass-through. The House included in their budget $5 million for that. The rest of these items in the House are all things that we had in our legislative agenda items. So we're extraordinarily happy to see $2 million for Delegate Askew's cancer screening legislation. That'll be a big plus, not just for Virginia Beach, but for the state. $500,000 for the historic Nemo Church. $500,000 for the YMCA partnership. This is a daycare partnership. $2 million for a Menhaden research study. I know we talked a lot last week about the Menhaden legislation and our disappointment and how that legislation was not successful in the House. Well, this is the reason why. It's because they decided to do it through the budget instead. We'll have to wait and see what the half sheet says on some of the specifics on that study, but my guess was that the legislation was likely more broad and they were trying to reduce the scope and maybe some of the cost. Their original request for this study was closer to $3 million. So we'll see once we get all the details. But we're happy to see that show up here in the House budget. Additionally, there's $2 million for the Solar Interconnection Grant Program. We've talked previously about how a lot of government agencies or a lot of governments, local governments would like to do solar on the rooftops, but the interconnection fees to get onto the grid are really cost prohibitive. So a grant program like this could help local governments advance some additional solar. House included $1 million for the Sports Tourism Grant Program, $150,000 to study emergency management needs in Virginia. That one's particularly important to us as the federal government looks to reduce the role of FEMA. There's going to be likely a lot of additional responsibilities placed on the state. This study will help us prepare for that. Also, the House included language, but no money, but language to create a legislative work group to study the impacts of the veterans tax exemption. That's an issue that local governments have been raising for a couple of years now. And they also included $43.5 million for the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund. On the Senate side, the Senate historically does fewer these sort of line item budget amendments. They try to fund the major programs in a different way. So you will see fewer of these sort of things on the Senate side. But they did include $2.5 million for the Sports Tourism Grant Program, $43.5 million for the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund, and $19 million in one-time capital assistance for transit systems. And then a big item here, this one was not included in our legislative agenda, but it was something that Hampton Roads Sanitation District has been working hard on. And the Senate funded $340.5 million for their treatment plant project, which will benefit all the local governments that are in that system. The next couple slides, spell out just some of the differences in the budgets in the House and the Senate. You'll see a lot of similarities here. Um, so the House and Senate both proposed their budget on Sunday. By I think it's Thursday of this week, each chamber will have to approve their budget and send it across to the other chamber, and the budget negotiations will continue to form one single budget. One of the big differences you'll see here is in the presumed allocations, the amount of money they believe they have to spend. On the House side, they believe they have $71.5 billion. On the Senate side, $74.1 billion. The biggest item that creates that discrepancy is the Senate removed a tax incentive program for data centers that created like $1.5 billion in additional funds that the Senate spent are allocated throughout their budget. And so that was the biggest difference, and they'll have to come to some sort of policy agreement on that, on if they want to move forward with that or not. One of the big items that they took care of in both budgets was in trying to restore some of the federal cuts that were the results of H.R. 1, including providing additional funding for healthcare marketplace premium support, and additional funding for SNAP benefits. On the House side, they included funding to, there are some new administrative requirements coming down from the federal government for both state and local governments. The House included funding to cover the administrative costs for both the state and the local governments. We'll have to see what the Senate did with that as we get more details, but the Senate did not spell that out specifically in the information they released on Sunday, but we'll keep an eye on that. That's going to be pretty crucial for local governments throughout the Commonwealth. On the education side, the House maintained the 2% pay raise for teachers. The Senate added an additional percent to raise that to 3%. And then the House included $400 million in what they're calling one-time flexible spending support for K-12. The one caveat with that is that those dollars will only be available to localities that provide the pay raise to teachers. And the dollars will be distributed in different buckets through different formulas, part of it through the at-risk add-on and part of it by population. So again, you're kind of repeating myself a lot, but we're waiting for the details on that. Typically, when each chamber releases their budget, they'll release a spreadsheet that shows each locality's the impact to each locality school system. And so we're waiting for that spreadsheet to be released here, hopefully today. So that's the House side on education. The Senate side, well, actually, I guess I'll point out, both took an interesting tact on school construction and added dollars for school construction grants, and both have moved away from school construction loans. They're starting to notice that the loans aren't being utilized to their fullest potential, and they're starting to move some of the dollars that have historically been allocated for loans and moving those into grants, which is a good thing. And then on the Senate side, the Senate included $1.3 million for a JLARC study of the school funding formula for the state school funding formula, which was a recommendation from JLARC that the funding formula needed to be updated. And so that's just something we'll have to keep an eye on, as with any sort of formulaic allocation of dollars, as once you start tinkering with it, you start to have winners and losers and those dollar allocations. And so the devil is just always in the details on those sort of things. The House budget included 2% pay raise for state employees and 2% pay raise for state-supported local employees. The Senate included an additional 1% pay raise for state employees. Both budgets made some serious investments in childcare and housing, which were things that were in our legislative agenda and that we've been pushing for. Both included $137 million for additional childcare subsidy slots. Both funded legislation that's moving through the system to create a childcare pilot program that would provide state funding to local employers who provide a match to provide childcare for their employees. The 25 million in the House, 50 in the Senate. And then both made major investments in housing as well. 87.5 million housing trust fund investment in the House, 50 million in the Senate. Likewise, both made pretty major investments in the Metro transit system up in Northern Virginia. I thought it was interesting that they did so, and in doing so, they also included a 1% increase in the transit occupancy tax for Northern Virginia. That's an interesting tax for them to take. And you'll also see under the transit column in the House, they included $300,000 for the HRT study that has been moving through the system. Both chambers included funding to raise salaries for legislators, $45,000 in the House, raising the salary to $50,000 in the Senate. Right now, the legislators' salaries are around $18,000. So I thought that was interesting as well. And then under taxes, there's been a lot of discussion, and we've talked about it a lot. There were no tax increases. They didn't end up expanding the sales tax in the budget as they had discussed earlier in the session. On the Senate side, they did, like as I mentioned earlier, they eliminated the $1.1 billion in tax exemptions for data centers. And they used a lot of that money to provide a small tax rebate to tax filers and to increase the standard deduction. I didn't see the increase in the standard deduction in the House, but could have just been something I missed. And that's something that's pretty typical each budget cycle. So I'm not 100% sure that wasn't in the House, but I didn't see it. I think this is my last slide on the budget, but we definitely wanted to highlight this for you. On the House side and the information they released on Sunday, they included the fiscal impact to much of the labor legislation that's moving through the legislative session, things that we've been talking about. I didn't see these things explicitly spelled out on the Senate side, so we'll be on the lookout for that as more information comes out. But the House included $20 million in fiscal year 2027 for startup costs dealing with collective bargaining. A big portion of that deals with the Virginia Home Care Authority. That is in the House version. That part is not in the Senate version of collective bargaining right now. So that could be why that's in the House budget, not in the Senate budget. The House also included $14.5 million over the biennium to cover the cost of raising the minimum wage to $15, $11.1 million to provide paid sick leave to personal care attendants funded by Medicaid, and included a $116.5 million Treasury loan to begin work to to establish the paid family medical leave program. The next couple slides are just kind of a really quick summary of some of the big pieces of legislation that we're still following, that are still active. None of these have had any movement since our last briefing, and we talked about these, but just a reminder of really kind of what we're focusing on and continuing to work on. As we were just talking about, all of these things, collective bargaining, prevailing wage for public works projects, those bills are in interesting shape, differently in the Senate and the House. Paid sick leave and paid family leave. On the next slide are some of the revenue stream items that we've been watching: skill games, cannabis retail marketplace, and the 1% sales tax for school construction. There's an interesting thing happened here that we weren't expecting, but the legislation from the Senate wound up being left in Senate Finance and did not get a full vote on the Senate floor. So language and funding from this legislation was included in the Senate budget. So don't know, maybe it's just a different tack they wanted to take in the House, but certainly something that was interesting and unexpected. We thought because this legislation has passed the last 2 years out of the General Assembly and had been vetoed by the governor, we expected a similar result this year, and all the intel and discussions we had was telling us the same thing. So that was a big surprise. And then the last slide here just highlights some of the land use legislation that we are continuing to follow. Still lots of work going on here dealing with a lot of mandates on local governments on how we use our on land use policy. We're hoping we'll have a good result. Legislators are certainly listening to us, working with us. Lots of amendments have been included in these pieces of legislation. So they all have gotten better as they've moved through the process. They're still not great, and there's a couple of them that we really, really don't like. But we're going to continue to work with the legislators to, see if there's some compromise to be had, and to make sure that these pieces of legislation are things that we can live with. Last thing I will leave with you is really just kind of a process briefing, I guess. So typically what happens from here is oftentimes there's bills that are introduced in the House and the Senate. Sometimes they start exactly the same. Sometimes they start similar, but they're on the same topic or the same code section. They work their ways through the chambers. So oftentimes get amended along the process. And then once they pass the chamber, they flip over to the other chamber. So once they go to the other chamber, the typical process is that that chamber will conform that bill to the way it passed their chamber, and then they'll just pass it along until it gets through. So theoretically, and this happens, I don't know, hundreds of times every legislative session, the same bill concept will pass each chamber in a final form, but they'll be different. So once that happens, they go to what they call a conference committee. And a conference committee is made up of 3 members of the Senate, 3 members of the House, and they get together and try to hash out the differences and come up with one piece of legislation that they believe could pass the House and the Senate. From there is no official meeting. They meet sometimes in the hallway, sometimes they meet in the senator's office. Most of the time they just talk while they're on the floor. So once it gets into conference committee, we always say anything could happen, anything at all, amendments that you never thought of or seen before. Legislation can go all the way back to its original form. Sometimes things just fall apart and it doesn't pass at all. Conference committees are, I don't know, they're our worst nightmare because they are very difficult to follow and to try and influence. So as you hear these things moving into conference, it's certainly something to be aware of and keep top of mind that, we'll do everything we can to continue to influence outcomes, but conference committees get tough on us. So, but I would expect most of these big pieces of legislation to wind up there, from collective bargaining to maybe even cannabis, although the cannabis, there's not a ton of differences between the House and Senate. Some of this land use stuff, all likely headed towards conference. And so certainly a lot of work to be done here over these last couple of weeks. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions or comments.
Okay, questions, comments, anybody? Worth?
Mayor Dyer, thank you, Mr. McKenzie, for the briefing and the work. I just want to encourage you for the spot marking pilot program. Thank you for the support there. Interested in that because you may know that we are council's considering a major investment in Atlantic Avenue, and we'd hate to make that investment with the continued markings that are there. So if you could pass that along, that we'd like for this program to come forward if possible. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Brent, we look forward to having you back.
Me too, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Hey, God bless. All right, moving on.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, at this time we'll be joined by my fellow council appointee colleague, Sue Cunningham, the city's real estate assessor. She's going to give city council and the public her annual report regarding the current conditions of our real estate market.
Welcome.
Thank you. Get organized here. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, fellow appointees. I am here to give you the annual report for the projected real estate assessments for fiscal year 2027. As a reminder, I follow state code and city ordinances to assess all property in the city of Virginia Beach annually at 100% of market value. City code requires that I complete this analysis by the end of January, and this includes data that we've analyzed through the calendar year 2025. So through December 25, and then by the end of January, I have to have all that reconciled and back and ready for budget purposes. Along with the values that we see today that are representing the market value adjustments that I've made to the assessments, this includes my projections for 2 quarters of new construction, changes in values due to plats and rezonings, along with adjustments in value due to appeals. I'm here to report all these values to you, but the effort and the dedication and the professionalism lies with the rest of my team. There's 24 members on this team, and there is no plug-in formula for coming up with an assessed value. It's all analytics and research, and this team dedicates every day to analyzing that data, making sure our ownership transfers are correct, completing field work in the snow and rain and the mud, answering difficult questions, and they do all that with the understanding that the service they provide must be communicated with respect and professionalism. I'm beyond grateful to these team members for what they do and to let me lead them for this city, and I thank them very much. The projected total assessments, including the values today and my projected 2 quarters, are going to be a little bit over $92 billion. This projection represents about a 6% increase from last year, including growth and appreciation. It'll generate, at the current tax rate, it'll generate approximately $896 million in real estate tax revenue. And at the current rate of 97 cents per 100, each penny will generate about $9.2 million in tax revenue. Again, as a reminder, real estate is the single largest source of revenue for the general fund. And that fund really takes up the cost associated with running our schools, with streets, with flood mitigation, running our rec centers, public safety, our agricultural reserve program, and funding initial council initiatives and priorities. When we take a look at the chart here of the growth and appreciation throughout the years, our overall increase was similar to last year. We had a little bit less appreciation, but we're still greater than what we've seen in the prior years. And this chart goes back to 2018, just to give you the representative of those indicators. This chart, again, gives you a little idea of how much information and the amount of work tied to those 34 members of my department. Each year, we have to reappraise 163,000 parcels plus. That includes about 3,800 exempt parcels that have to be valued every year as well. And again, that includes making sure that we have the property characteristics updated, the annual revaluation, new construction, changes in ownership, plat recordation, and all of that. I'd like to spend a little bit of time on this inventory maintenance productivity, the numbers here. In 2025, my real estate technicians processed almost 14,000 ownership transfers. Just a little bit on that process and what it takes for them. Each year or each day, they review all the documents that are recorded in the clerk of court's office that have to do with ownership or real estate transactions. And while we don't guarantee title, our technicians do make sure that things like GPIN, ownership, and legal descriptions are correct before they enter that information into our system, which is necessary for appropriate billing and notifications on all properties in the city. It takes about a week for us to process 1 day's worth of transfer with all the analytics and the research that goes into that. That's about 40 transactions per day. Of those days, there'll be at least, or an average of 2 transactions that are going to require additional follow-up before my technicians will record that in our system. Legal descriptions may be wrong, GPINs may be wrong, They reach out to attorneys, to surveyors, to owners to try to get that information corrected before we'll enter it into our system. We then have to manually take all that information from the clerk of court system and then re-enter it and duplicate it into our system for ownership transfers and transaction. That's a lot of work just for the transfers. On the 257 subdivision plats, that's a lot of information that goes back and forth between our GS department and ourselves before that information and those new parcels can be committed into our system to ensure we have the proper property boundaries, legal information before it'll get into our system. Also, as a note, this number of corrections, this isn't all mistakes that we're making. This is sometimes research and history where we've noticed that there's been a problem with a transfer or there's been some research done that we need to go back in history and we may need to correct 4 or 5 years of historic transfer information on one parcel. And again, just a breakdown of these plats. These aren't all just regular subdivision split and merge plats. We processed 89 of those in 2025, 119 easements, which are easements, right-of-way, and roads takes, which also have to be analyzed to see if they have an impact on the value of the property, 56 condominium plats, and all of those properties that have to be researched again for issues with illegal information before we'll process them. Again, that's a lot of work, and we try to get all those transfers up through the end of December so that our appraisers then have that information on sales to get everything finalized by the end of January. Oops. So then we get to our breakdown by district of total assessments. Again, you'll see similar to last year, Districts 6 and 8 generate the most value, followed closely by Districts 2 and 5. Some of the top residential neighborhoods by value in District 6 include, obviously, the Oceanfront, Bay Colony, Cavalier, and some of the high-value commercial properties include the hotels down on the oceanfront. In District 8, we have Bay Island, Broad Bay, Point Greens, and Point Chesapeake on the Bay as high-performing residential neighborhoods. Then we have the Delta Hotel, Lynn Haven Shops, and some mini storage facilities in Rosemont in that district as high performers. I thought it might be interesting also to take a look at the districts broken down by major property types, including commercial, multifamily, and residential. This chart just kind of gives you a breakdown by both property count and percent of total value by district on how much residential, how much multifamily, and how much commercial can be found in each district. You can see pretty much by this that District 4 probably has the most balance of all 3 categories in the city. The next slide is that same breakout just by total value. And what you can see on both of these slides is that residential is the mountainous impact of value on all the districts throughout the city. By parcel count, residential property accounts for about 95% of our inventory. Next, we can take a look at the assessment comparison by classification history. This has remained fairly constant throughout the years, as this chart shows you, with about 78% residential and 13.5% commercial. And again, by parcel count, residential is about 95% of that. Commercial by count is about 4%, with multifamily making up the additional 1%. When we look at the change in property value by classifications, the one thing that stuck out here, again, this is a change from January to January, so it includes growth and appreciation. That industrial figure of 22% really stuck out. That is because of new construction that's included in this figure that included some large commercial properties completion in 2025. Our information for all of our income properties is based on 2024 data. You can see our hotels didn't have much of a change. They're kind of reaching a point of normalization. And Virginia Beach is really showing a greater resilience than the national market. We saw some declines in revenue with the hotels and small increases in expenses. And as a note, every year we request income and expense information and rental data from our local owners. For hotels, we received only 25 income and expense back for the 2 consecutive years, which we need to kind of see trends and understand volatility in those areas. We have over 100 hotels, but we received 25 requests back. Our retail was fairly stable. We had about a 40% participation in our rental data collection on all categories. Multifamily was definitely our strongest performer. Our gross potential rent saw an increase of about 3% for large units and 4.6% for smaller. There was a slight decrease in expenses and a general decrease overall in vacancy and collection. That all resulted in an average net operating income of about 4.5% across all categories. And again, we're only as good as our data. Participation would be great for income and expense. We had about a 46% participation in multifamily. In the residential sector, our single-family detached homes obviously have the best influence on value. People enjoy their privacy. They enjoy locations in the higher value neighborhoods where these are located. Townhouses remain our most affordable inventory. When we take a look at the mean median appreciation by category, our overall average was about 5.74, median being 5.23. Residential, you can see the residential, multifamily, and commercial breakouts on this slide as well. Oops. This is just a chart showing the distribution and change of values. The purple indicates that these properties, this is the majority of properties that changed, that increased or decreased less than 10%. That's the majority of properties in the city. We did have some small percentages that we're going to see some double-digit increases across the city as well. When we look at a chart looking at our overall median appreciation throughout the years, we're on a downward trend, but we're still higher than anything we saw from 2022 and beyond. 2008 was obviously an anomaly with the financial crisis and the housing bubble there. This kind of slide gives us a good idea of why we use multiple statistics when we're trying to figure out assessments in real estate. This is the average or mean and median for properties based on value categories. The first thing that stuck out to us was what the heck happened in the $150,000 and below range. When we took a look at this data, we saw that this is being impacted by about 300 properties all in one location. I think it was an over 55 facility where we didn't have all the data that was necessary in those prior years to understand what was actually being reflected in those sale prices. So they saw a rather large increase this year as we got interest in that new data. If you remove those 300 properties from that category, the average comes down to about 2%. Typically, this is why we weigh more heavily the median than we do the average when we're doing statistics in real estate. We took a look at residents by year built and their median assessment as well. Similar to last year, our oldest housing stock and newest housing stocks are generating the most value. Again, the older housing stocks, when Virginia Beach was first populated, centered around the ocean front and some waterfront areas, they're still indicating the best value for those areas based on location. Some of the high value sales for properties in the neighborhoods, again, were the North End or oceanfront, Bay Colony, Sandbridge, and Linkhorn Estates. The majority of our housing was, you can see, was built in the 80s, where the median sale price was $341,700. When we take a look at the mean median residential values by category, this compares to where we were from January to January for that change in median. This is similar to last year when we see the duplexes and the home with accessory dwelling units performing the best in as far as change. Some of that is the duplexes that are being purchased, demolished, and two new condos are being built on the same area. And also the people are being more attracted to those accessory dwelling units for multi-generational living. In addition to this, We have 41,872 apartment units. This is up 734 units from last year. Again, just an indicator on this slide that our duplexes are performing well as our high-rise. A lot of our high-rise condos, some of them, the ones that are over $1 million per unit, include Point Chesapeake on the Bay, 921 Oceans, and 42 Oceans. In new construction, we recognize the total value of $719 million in new construction. Again, an anomaly this year was a larger portion of that was generated by our commercial properties. That's because we had the Amazon warehouse distribution center completed. There were some completions finalized in Atlantic Park, and our acoustical tile buildings were completed in 2025 as well. Our value of new construction is up predominantly from last year. Again, I attribute that to the cost of construction and the cost of labor, but also to those large commercial categories that we had completed in 2025. Although that value is up, the number of new units that we built was down from last year by about 159 units. Of these new units that were constructed, 18% represented homes, 12% were condominiums, 69% were those apartment units, and the remainder 1% were townhouse, duplex, and attached homes. Again, the mean median on these homes remains pretty significant at over $800,000 for this year. We're down a little bit from last year, but these mean and medians for new homes are almost double what our existing inventory values are for mean and median. We broke that down further when we take a look at those properties' new construction by value range. We did not have any homes constructed under $250,000 this year. The majority of the new homes in the 350 and less category, again, were attributable to Spence Crossing. They had 59 units constructed last year with an average sale price of $325,000. You can see that a majority of our inventory, over 32% of new homes, was in the million-plus categories. Asheville Park accounted for 35 of those properties over $1 million. This change in land is very difficult to determine. What we're trying to capture here is the change in land that's attributable to rezonings, subdivisions of property. It can also be impacted by properties that change status from taxable to exempt or exempt and taxable. It's really hard to determine because when we have new plats or subdivisions that come in mid-cycle, they don't get assessed until the next fiscal year. So we kind of lump in appreciation and that new lot value to the next fiscal year, and it's difficult to separate that out. Obviously, we have a limited supply of land, and that would attribute less development here. We're trying to find a better way to track this for you in the upcoming years. We move on to our tax increment financing in special service districts. Compared to last year, again, this is a January to January comparison. So Sandbridge is at $2.2 billion. That's up about 10% from last January. Atlantic Park was a new CDA last year at $45 million. It's at $126 million now due to new construction with that large increase. The Central Business District TIF is an increase of about 8% from last year at $1.3 billion. And the SSD is an increase of about 4% from last January. We also have our special dredging districts that were adopted in 2011 by council in response to interested neighborhoods looking at ways to keep their navigational waterways intact. This requires about 80% of the residential participation of the waterfront or impacted properties, and the additional tax is used to fund that dredging in specifics. The city does cost participate in dredging a channel down to those SSD district channels as well. We don't have any new SSDs that are in place as of this year. The Virginia Landmark Registry was administered by the state to promote the preservation of historic properties. No new properties this year, and the tax reduction associated to these parcels, which reduces the rate on the building by about 47 cents, is little over $100,000 in tax reduction. We also have a beach historic rehabilitation program. For the historic rehabilitations, the property must be listed on the historical register. They can be no less than 50 years of age, and the credit runs for 15 years. We have no new properties in the program this year. You can see the tax reduction there of about $33,000. We have a similar rehabilitation program in the Vibe District. Again, similar program. We have not had any new participants in this program as well. And then the Accident Potential Zone APZ conforming rehab credit was put in place to encourage redevelopment and revitalization by converting non-conforming use to conforming. Runs for 15 years, and we have a single property in that program. I have to make a clarification on this slide. In the past, I've been reporting this as a tax credit. It is not a tax credit. This is by Code of Virginia, the Code of Virginia established energy efficient buildings as a separate classification of real estate. What this does is allow for a city to tax these properties that are classified as energy efficient at a rate that is different from the local rate. So the city council adopts the rate each year for these energy efficient classified buildings. Currently, that rate reduction is 15 cents below our rate, and this is only applied to the structures, not the land. We had a slight increase this year, and you can see the impact and the increase on this throughout the years. This classification runs with the property, so if the property transfers, the classification remains, and once you're in, you're in. There's been no recertification. Planning department is responsible for the application processing. We track the process for the land book and tax reductions. Our land use taxation programs allows us to assess properties, farm properties, based on rates determined by the states versus market value for those properties being farmed or open space. There's an application process and an annual recertification to remain in the program. The acreage we have in there now, almost 32,000 acres, reduced about 109 acres from last year. What we have now is about 56% agricultural and 28% forest. The difference between the market value, what I would assess them on if they were developable and at full market versus what the state assesses them for, is continued as the deferred value. We had a deferred value of $250 million this year, which results in a deferred tax of about $2.4 million. If a property that's in this land use program transitions to a more intensive use, it comes out of the land use program, and the current plus 5 years of that deferred value is taxed, and plus interest is collected for those current plus 5 years, and that's looked at too as a rollback process. In 2025, we rolled back 16 acres for a little over $17,000. Our exempt property, we have almost 38,000 parcels of exempt property, the majority of which are locally owned or federal government owned. This represents about $13 billion in value, and also about 12.4% of our total value overall. The tax reduction associated with these exempt properties is about $126 million. The real estate senior exemption deferral and freeze programs are administered by the Commissioner of Revenue. The senior program saw a tax relief increase of about 5.8% from the previous years. The largest increase was attributable to our disabled veterans, where we had a 27% increase in tax relief, an additional 1,321 participants. As a reminder, our real estate assessment notices are going to be mailed Friday, February 27th. The annual report, which contains this information plus some more detailed information, will be available on our website shortly, as well as a neighborhood change report that lists out each neighborhood by district for the changes that you can expect to see overall. To let you know, we're dedicated, my staff is dedicated to answering calls and getting you information on your assessments through our appeal deadline, which is April 30th this year. In closing, I'd just like to thank City Council for their continued support for my department and for the opportunity to serve. And with that, I would open it up to questions.
Thank you, and let me get going, then we'll get to Stacy. You know, what we're seeing here today is not unique to Virginia Beach at all. This is happening everywhere. There is a housing crisis that is a national thing that everybody is contending with. As we run out of land, you know, once again, I brought up this scenario before. It wouldn't be unusual for a piece of land to cost between $100,000 and $150,000, if not more, and probably a lot more in a desirable situation. And then Wells Fargo calculated that approximately $90,000 plus are now regulatory costs that go into building a home. So you're talking $200 to $225,000 before you put the first nail in the first board. And I think that explains why housing inventory, you know, even modest is like, what, 350,000 now? And, but the thing is, the important thing is that we have a need to increase housing inventory, because as people migrate up to it, it creates vacancy down below. But once again, you know, we are, you know, confronted with the problem that, you know, we want our police, we want our teachers, we want the people that work in public works to be able to have good housing. But once again, you know, this is a problem that we must confront, and we're going to. Stacy?
So this big increase again. Question for you though. I guess you use sales comps as a big part of your evaluation process.
For residential, yes, it's a majority.
So is there a discount given for, like, if there's a low amount of sales in a given neighborhood?
Is there a discount given? What,
So for instance,
right, I understand.
hypothetically, and let's say there's an island in Virginia Beach. Hypothetically.
There is an island in Virginia Beach.
And let's say there's about 400 houses on this island, hypothetically. And so if one 3-bedroom house, if somebody had owned that for 20 years, and then before they were getting ready to sell it, they did a major remodel of the kitchen and the bathrooms and the flooring and what have you, to greatly increase the value of that when they went to sell it. How would that affect the rest of the comparable type houses in that neighborhood?
Gotcha, that's a good question. So what we try to do when we analyze data, and you had asked me a question some years ago, is it more difficult to assess in an upturn or a downturn market? The reality is it's more difficult to assess when I don't have any data. It doesn't matter what market it is. So in your scenario, we have neighborhoods where properties are being renovated and sold. We have properties that are being sold out of estates where there's no renovations being done. When we do our analysis on a neighborhood, we try to stratify that and take into consideration that a renovated property is obviously more desirable than one that hasn't had any work done, and adjust accordingly as we can to that data. If we can't find it within the neighborhood, then we reach out to similar properties in surrounding areas just to see if we have an impact that will give us an indication of how to treat each of those and how to stratify accordingly.
How would you know if there was renovation done?
Well, typically, we have different ways of researching this. MLS obviously gives us, the internet can give us great detail on properties that have sold. If we can't, we go out and visit all the sales. Once they occur, we leave door hangers. We try to contact agents, owners, to get information that we can on each of those transfers as they happen.
Okay, Worth?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Cunningham, for the presentation, and for your staff. 163,000 plus parcels over 12 months is a lot of data. So thank you yet again for that. Just a quick question about hotels, because you say 25% respond with information, which I understand, but I also understand you need to value these properties fairly, because constituents do ask me this question, more than one constituent. Are you using the other ways to value the properties, or are you just going on the data submitted? Because how do you know for the most of, and multifamily for that matter, too.
Right. So clarification, 25 gave us data for 2 consecutive years. We might have had a little more participation from 1 year, but maybe they didn't participate last year. What those trends allow us to do is build a model. So for us in mass appraisal, it's not only the market value of the property, but it's treating properties equitably. The only way we can do that is by trying to figure out trends and what stabilized, how a property would react with a stabilized operating expense and income. When we don't get those from properties, we also look at national indicators. We reach out to our other jurisdictions. We don't only rely on, and we don't only take a look at our local suppliers, but they're certainly the best indicator of what's happening in our market. Sure.
Amelia?
Okay, thank you for this great presentation.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask where you mentioned 2 things. The townhomes you said seem to be more affordable.
They are. When we look at sales and transactions, the townhomes are selling at a lower value than oceanfront homes, single-family detached, and condominiums that are being purchased in Virginia Beach at this time.
Is there a reason?
I would say because they're most affordable because I'm trying to put into words. You're not taxing the land. You don't have a yard to complete. There's typically smaller units. I can't speak to the financing, but it might be easier to get financing on those smaller units as well.
Thank you. And the other, you talk, nobody for the historic?
No, we haven't had any new applications in any of those programs in several years.
Yeah, because I remember in Kempsville when we did the 525,
Yep.
we changed in the high school, all that goes into it. Say there's none, or you just have heard nothing.
We've had no new applicants. They typically come through my office, so I have nobody else reapplying.
Thank you.
Josh?
Thank you, Mayor. Sue, thank you to everybody in your office. I know you do a tremendous amount of work, and you're on a lean and mean department, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
The tax exemptions that we saw, the numbers that keep increasing over the years, I want to say the disabled vets and the KIA and spouses were upwards of $35+ million, correct? And then another 15 for our local tax relief. And this is probably just maybe more of a question for the manager and Brent when he gets back, but I know, these are extremely worthy causes. And these are all of them, people who've either served or who are disabled folks in a dire financial circumstance. But when these things are put on to, a constitutional amendment or to vote, when folks are, making decisions at a polling precinct, do the numbers come out in those, in the ballot language? Does it ever translate to folks who are voting for these tax adjustments? Does it translate into what this means, I guess? And assuming the answer to that is no, I think it would be, I don't know, a nice act to at least have voters evaluate what kind of financial impact that some of these decisions have, especially when it comes to, their projected kind of long-term increases over time.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, the Councilmember Shulman, I don't recall how it was actually done when the constitutional amendment was done, when it was, but I don't think it was able for them to predict the number of participants in these programs. And it's one of the reasons why cities, including Virginia Beach, has asked the General Assembly to look at this, to see if there's a way to possibly reimburse localities for the costs associated with these rebates.
That's, my quick math, that's 6 cents, right? I think, essentially.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think roughly it's about 1% of our assessment growth or something like that.
Okay, anybody else? Once again, my friends, we have another confrontation with reality. And once again, at least now we got some of the data that we need to move forward. Hey, thank you very much. Sometimes it's a thankless job, but you are indeed necessary. And thank you to your entire crew. Really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, at this time, council will receive a review of the comprehensive plan that will be presented to the Planning Commission for their consideration in March. And after that, council will be free to ask any questions on the next steps in the process. Okay. So Kathy Warren will start the presentation, then we'll have Hank Morrison.
Hey, Kathy, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Today, we are happy to bring you the Imagine VB 2040 Comprehensive Plan. This is a more in-depth presentation than the one we provided to you in October of 2025. Before we get started, special thanks, of course, to Hank Morrison and Rachel Miller on our comprehensive planning staff, to Renaissance Planning and Dell's Architects who've worked with us over the last 2 years to put this document together. And then, of course, to our Planning Commission who have held 8 separate workshops on this plan to date. So this is the presentation overview. We're going to talk about really what is a comprehensive plan, why is the comprehensive plan being updated. We'll walk you through our community engagement over the last couple of years and what we heard. What is this comprehensive plan about and how is it different from the 2016 plan? And then Hank's going to get into a chapter 1 through 7 overview. We'll talk about the comp plan and how it aligns with the citywide citizen survey. We do have a budget request in this year to update the zoning code, and so we'll talk a little bit about that, and then give you the current status and proposed next steps before we get into discussion. So what is a comprehensive plan? Well, this is an essential feature of our long-range planning for the city. It expresses a collective and cohesive vision for our future. It promotes economic development in many different ways. It allows for development while protecting valued resources. It provides justification for decisions, shapes the appearance of our community, and guides implementation tools such as our zoning ordinance, our capital improvement plan, and subsidiary plans. It is important to note that this is a guidance document. So there are times, as you know, that although the comprehensive plan may call for something specific in an area, City Council and or Planning Commission have decided to go in a different direction based on approvals. Also, there are times when we realize something isn't working with the comprehensive plan. So at that time, we'll bring you proposed amendments to make those changes as necessary. So why is it being updated? Well, first, Virginia law requires a review of comprehensive plans every 5 years. Our last plan was adopted in 2016. Yes, we're a little bit late fully updating, but we got hit with COVID in those few years, so that really put us on a delay when we had to stop our public engagement. This gives us a chance to revisit and update our goals, objectives, and policies for the city. Again, what's working, what's not working. And then it reflects changing conditions in our population changes, flooding, attainable housing pressures, economic shifts, and new demand for redevelopment and infill development. So for community engagement, we conducted 3 surveys where we had over 9,000 responses. We had 10 focus groups initially, 12 public meetings, where we had over 1,500 participants. We had 100+ stakeholder input meetings attended by staff. As I already mentioned, 8 Planning Commission workshops. We've had 9 City Council staff reports, and this is our 4th City Council briefing. All of our documents associated with the update of the plan and all of our meeting videos are published on our website. And then the total number of comments received on our actual plan is 612. So what did we hear in the community engagement phase for the comp plan? Well, there was a recognition that the city is going to grow. So it's important to strike a balance between protecting the established neighborhoods and the rural areas of the city, while also identifying locations that are appropriate for infill and redevelopment, like our strategic growth areas, along major travel corridors, and within aging commercial areas north of the Green Line. We also heard that maintaining the Green Line urban growth boundary was also extremely important to residents. Of course, resiliency was also on a lot of people's minds, making sure that the city is sustainable and resilient into the future, not only environmentally, but also economically and socially. And then there was also a strong desire from residents who wanted more options on how they get around the city, not only to be able to drive safely and efficiently to their destination, but also to be able to walk, bike, or take transit to travel around Virginia Beach. So what is this plan about, and why is it different from the 2016 plan? Well, it aligns closely with the city council priorities that you've established in your retreats. It has a strong redevelopment focus, whereas in past years, there was a real focus on greenfield development, which you all know our greenfields are now diminishing. There's now a designation of context areas, 4 of those, and centers and corridors. And it is important to note that the centers in the plan are already areas that are in Virginia Beach with a mixture of housing, jobs, commerce, and supportive infrastructure. This plan just puts those centers on a map for redevelopment. It also formalizes the blue line, and this plan is much more streamlined than the former plan. You will now be able to go online, and if a plan like one of our strategic growth areas plans is referenced, you'll be able to just click on that and it'll take you directly to that plan. This plan is a lot easier to read, a lot of pictures, and I think you will find quite an improvement. And then, of course, I've already mentioned there is a recommendation to update the city zoning ordinance. So this is just showing you the structure of the new plan. It's 7 chapters. This is the flow of how this comprehensive plan works. The first 2 chapters are really citywide goals. And then the next 4 chapters are context areas that goes into specific details and specific guidance for our 4 context areas. And then it narrows down even further into chapter 7 for guidance within our different place types, which convey the character, function, and development patterns for the different settings within each context area. These are the citywide goals that were established as part of the public engagement process: economic and development and job creation, housing attainment in all housing types, infill, urban development, and multimodal access north of the Green Line, rural and agricultural land protection south of the Blue Line, community identity and connections, neighborhood well-being and safety, and environmental sustainability. These goals apply across the city with tailored objectives that are specific for each area of the city you're in. So now I'm going to turn it over to Hank to go through the details of the plan.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of council. I think you all know who I am, but for the record, my name is Hank Morrison. I'm the Comprehensive Planning Administrator. So thank you, Kathy, for getting that started off. These are the 7 chapters that she spoke about. So chapters 1 and 2 are citywide, and then we go into the context area chapters and the place type policies and design guidelines in chapter 7. And these are the 4 context areas that are new to this plan that Kathy mentioned. So we have the coastal, the inland, the Green Line context area, and the rural context area. And these are the economic development areas in the city. So this includes our 8 strategic growth areas, our 3 special economic growth areas around Naval Air Station Oceana, and then Princess Anne Commons. So this is kind of just the overview for Chapter 1. We talk about existing conditions, demographic information, our military and regional partnerships. We talk about the public involvement process, and then we go into the citywide goals, objectives, and big ideas, as well as the general framework for the plan. So, like I said, it lays out the citywide goals, objectives, and priority policies to meet those goals. For economic development, the main strategy is just to continue following the economic development strategic plan, support agricultural industry, and attract year-round visitors. For housing attainment, use center redevelopment to increase housing supply, ensure the quality of existing housing, and address demand for senior housing. For environmental sustainability, this plan enhances healthy ecosystems, improves water quality, mitigates flooding, increases access to nature, and also protects, enhances, and connects natural lands and open spaces. For infill development, the plan is to direct new growth into these centers and then designate multimodal corridors to provide safe and convenient access between them. For community identity, we'll continue to recognize the unique histories and identities of communities and then leverage opportunities for things like public art and new opportunities for placemaking. And then for neighborhood well-being, promoting quality housing, safe streets, and then including additional protections for neighborhoods that are adjacent to non-residential developments. So as far as the framework goes, context areas define the vision and policies for those unique areas in the plan. Centers are settings for compact, mixed-use, walkable, transit-oriented development that are along corridors, while corridors are generally transportation routes that provide safe vehicular, walking, and cycling, as well as transit to and from centers. Planning areas are specific parts of the cities where development is guided by adopted plans. So think about the strategic growth areas, the ITA, Shore Drive, those are considered planning areas in this comprehensive plan. And then when we talk about place types, as Kathy mentioned, those convey the character, the function, and the development patterns within the context areas. So that could be like a type 1 neighborhood, your single family neighborhoods that are all sprinkled throughout the city. And then chapter 2 is all about the environment, our linear park system, and things like that. So the goals remain the same as chapter 1, enhance healthy ecosystems, improving water quality, mitigating flooding, those things. But in order to do that, the plan suggests things like expanding the use of green infrastructure, expanding public access to open space, development of a linear park system, and then enhancing connectivity between those protected areas. As far as water goes, continuing to implement the Sea Level Wise program, protecting the quality of the city's ground as well as our surface waters, and then encourage flood mitigation designs that will help to create multiple benefits. So that could be something like a floodable stormwater park or different landscape treatments that are useful. So that good. And then so from the citywide chapters, we're going into the context areas. So this is our first context area is the inland context area. And generally speaking, the Virginia Beach will continue to grow and sustain and diversify its economic base and standard of living. That growth, however, will be inward, not outward, so as to protect the rural and agricultural lands south of the blue line. The inland context area will absorb most of the city's anticipated future development, and suburban retail and office developments over time will transform into more walkable mixed-use centers. Neighborhoods will remain a healthy, safe place that provides a sense of well-being to the residents. And then community hubs will be created as places for residents to gather with walking and biking connections between. So going into some of the policies, just as a reminder, the policies remain the same, those citywide goals, and they're tailored to each specific context area. So for the inland context area, economic development is going to look different than it will in the rural part of the city. So for the inland context area, for economic development, the city will provide locations and other opportunities for businesses that are seeking more urban settings, as well as regional access. It'll provide locations and opportunities for industrial and logistics business growth. For housing attainment, we're going to be using center redevelopment to increase that housing supply and ensure the quality of existing housing and to address demand for the seniors as well. Let me see if I'm on the right place here. I don't think so. Here we go. I'm sorry, I apologize. Jumping over to some more different place types and land use policies, where we have guidance for institutional place types that encompasses large-scale educational facilities, health and civic functions like TCC and Regent and the Sentara General Hospital, industrial and logistics uses for large-scale manufacturing and warehousing uses like corporate landing within our SEGAs, and then business land use types like businesses, offices, and hotel zoning districts that are generally larger than 5 acres that also lie outside of those designated center areas. So jumping over to the coastal context area, this is the context area that stretches along the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And it draws residents and visitors alike. Businesses in the resort and the Shore Drive area will continue to bring outside income that supports the city's economy and tax base. And the neighborhoods will feature a mixture of housing from single-family homes to multi-story apartments and condos, designed to complement the coastal settings. So, and beaches and dunes will be strengthened to reduce flooding, and the resort will remain a major tourist draw while also becoming a more vibrant and accessible destination for residents alike. Neighborhoods will keep their diverse housing stock and their distinct character as well. And then we go into talking about the specific goals and objectives, the place types within the coastal area as well. So there's that. And then for Chapter 5, that is what we're calling the Green Line context area. It's where we're standing right now. So the Green Line context area will continue to buffer the urban and suburban land north of the Green Line and the rural lands south of the Blue Line. Enhancements and connections among open space and natural lands will create a connected open space system, and low-density neighborhoods will continue to be a place for refuge connected to neighborhood-oriented businesses and civic uses with walking and biking access. Princess Anne Commons will continue to be a place for low-impact and low-intensity businesses and activities that help to diversify the city's economy and culture. And the transition area will continue to support low-density residential and residential-serving uses while prioritizing the preservation of open space. And again, the chapter's laid out in a similar way as the other ones. We talk about the goals and objectives, the specific policies for the transition area and the Princess Anne Commons, and talk about the different place types within this context area. And then our final context area is our largest, the rural context area. So the city will enhance and connect rural and natural lands to continue to support viable agriculture south of the Blue Line. And this plan strives to create an open space system that safeguards the rural landscape and agricultural production, supports ecotourism opportunities, mitigates flooding, promotes wildlife migration, and provides public access to nature and recreation. So we do talk about the goals and objectives, the different place types, and the rural corridors and policies. So we're carrying over the rural villages from our current comprehensive plan. So that consists of Pungo, Creeds, Back Bay, and Blackwater. So those policies are being carried over directly. And the goals and objectives are really to support sustainable agriculture, as well as provide opportunities to access nature. And then for Chapter 7, we go into what we call the place types and design guidelines for those areas. So we're going in, we started off very broad and we narrow our focus down and we go all the way down to the parcel level. So Chapter 7 provides implementation guidance for how you organize the streets and blocks and how you get around within those. It provides guidance for what the building should look like in terms of shape and scale and aesthetics. talks about integrating natural areas, open space, and green infrastructure, and also provides guidance for things like parking and loading, and even freight access when that applies. So these are just kind of a major list of all of the place types. So we've got the 3 types of centers, the special use place types, and design guidelines for our institutional, our industrial and logistics place types in our business. We have neighborhoods designated. So we have 4 different types of neighborhood place types. Type 1 place type consists of exclusively single-family neighborhoods. Type 2 consists of kind of those neighborhoods that have a mixture of single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes, things like that. We have coastal neighborhoods for those different types of neighborhoods that are kind of unique to Shore Drive as well as the North End. They have to take into consideration things like different materials to use when constructing, whether to elevate their mechanical things. So there's some unique aspects of developing within a coastal area that gets carried over. And then we have our place type guidance for the transition area that really just mimics and mirrors the transition area design guidelines that are already in place. And then we also have our community hubs, rural villages, and our different corridors. So I'm going to get into the 3 different types of corridors that we have designated, or centers, excuse me. So we've got regional centers, which are high-intensity mixed-use settings for regionally oriented businesses and civic venues. So you think that's going to be town center and the resort. And then we've got city centers, which are kind of that medium to high-intensity setting for city-oriented businesses and civic venues. So that's going to be places like Hilltop or the Lynn Haven Mall or even here down at the Municipal Center. And then we've got local centers, which are that kind of low to moderate intensity setting for housing and also locally oriented businesses and civic uses. So that's going to be historic Kempsville is a great example of that. The Kemps River Shopping Center that's being redeveloped that you all approved, that's another great example. And then the intersection of Shore Drive and Great Neck, that scale is kind of what we're thinking of as far as local centers go. And here is a map that shows all of the centers and the different corridors. So one thing to note is that all of the centers are the same size in terms of like geography. They have a core with a quarter-mile radius, and then they have an edge that's an additional quarter mile. So every center has a radius of a half a mile, give or take. But the difference is the level of intensity within the center. So regional is going to be more of a jobs focus. Cities are going to be more of a mixture of housing and jobs, and then local is going to be more focused on housing. And then we've got our corridors shown there as well. The large blue ones, we've got the 2. We've got the regional corridor, Virginia Beach Boulevard, of course, and then our second one, which connects Town Center to the Municipal Center, which is the Independence to Princess Anne corridor. And then we've got our special use place types, which again, the place types convey the character, function, and development patterns in different settings. So we've got institutional place types, industrial and logistics place types, and then business place types. So these are all for these areas that might occur outside of a center. We provide guidance for that as well. And I spoke a little bit about the neighborhood place types before, but just I'm going to bring it back. Type 1 neighborhoods, those are going to be your single-family exclusive zoned neighborhoods. They're basically proposed not to change. We're adding protections and buffering requirements for new developments and things like that. So then we've got the Type 2 neighborhoods, which is that mixture of single-family and neighborhood-scale multifamily. And then the coastal and transition neighborhoods. And then the other place types, we have the rural villages, our community hubs, and our different corridors. So talking about the corridors, I did mention that we have 2 regional corridors, which is Virginia Beach Boulevard and then Princess Anne. We've got the city corridors, freight corridors, rural corridors. And generally our policies for this are to follow the master transportation plan as well as our local road safety action plan, monitor and improve sidewalk and biking facilities, review and improve transit service as needed. And then there's some policies to incorporate new corridor plans for Virginia Beach Boulevard and Princess Anne corridor within 10 to 20 years. So it's got our work cut out for us, hopefully. So I find this is a useful flow chart to kind of understand how staff will use this comprehensive plan when we get discretionary applications for things like rezonings or conditional use permits. So we get the proposed development, and then we determine, in this area of the city, are there adopted plans or regulations? If there are, for example, the Shore Drive Corridor Plan, staff would then we would go straight to the Shore Drive Corridor Plan and then use the policies that are in that particular plan to provide our recommendation, or at least from the comprehensive planning side. But that applies to any part of the city that has an adopted plan or regulatory structure to it. So, but if that's not the case, there's other options for the applicant. The first is that they can develop it by right, which is, of course, obviously their right. But we would definitely encourage them to use our design guidelines. Obviously, it wouldn't be required, but there's also the second option would be to do a site rezoning. So that's when it would come forward to you all, and we would recommend that they use the center redevelopment design guidelines. And then option number 3, this is probably going to be a fairly rare occurrence, but the thinking is that if there's going to be a fairly large redevelopment, probably over 20 acres, then we would want to create an entire center plan so we could focus on how to holistically redevelop that center. So there are 4 appendices at the end of the plan. We talk about zoning districts to place types. That's just a kind of a helpful thing when reviewing land use applications. We also provide detailed maps of every center that we've designated. There are 40 centers in the plan. That we also have our documents adopted by reference. Those are those subsidiary plans that guide more in depth than the actual comprehensive plan. And then we have our soils map, which our zoning ordinance and the soils map are linked down in the southern part of the city to restrict the density down there. And Kathy did mention that we wanted to take a look at the 2025 community survey that was put out last year. We started this almost 3 years ago, so it's important for us to kind of check in and see if the policies that we're putting out are kind of still in line with what the community's thinking. So these are the specific areas where we think that there's strong alignment. The next slide will show that these are the areas where there's some concerns, but we think that the comp plan bolsters these concerns. So, and then Kathy also mentioned that the planning department has included a budget request for an update to the city's zoning ordinance, and that is a recommendation of this comprehensive plan as well. And so our final draft was posted on the 18th, and final comments have been compiled and they were distributed back to the planning commissioners. The final planning commission workshop was held in January, and it is on the agenda for March 11th planning commission hearing, and will be headed to you all in April for final consideration. And I can stand by for questions. Thank you for your time.
Stacy, get things rolling and then
Thank you very much for the presentation. First question is, we've been given a number of these drafts. Are we going to be given given the final that the planning commission will recommend?
Yes, if you'd like hard copies of those, we're happy to have those printed for you and provide those to you.
Okay, great. Can you go to slide 23?
there you go.
Okay. For clarity, because this is a little bit of a unique situation, I think, and because we have a city center, actually we have 2 city centers in the transition or in the Green Line area. So we have the municipal center, which is the larger of the municipal centers. And in the comprehensive plan, as I'm reading it, there is a call for housing around these city centers, and particularly around the edge of the city centers, where type 2 housing would be encouraged. Am I correct so far?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because, so is there a priority given to, because this is obviously going to be in this Green Line area, is there going to be a priority given to the city center thought or to the Green Line context?
Well, so this goes back to that flow chart because there is a adopted plan for the transition area. If we got an application for that, we would just follow the transition area guidelines. If it was in the ITA overlay, we would follow the ITA master plan. The thinking with the comp plan designating these as centers is that there are already areas where businesses and different places that people want to go exist. So city centers you can develop hotels. They doesn't have to be housing. It can just be more walkable, more, I guess more of like a walkable urban setting to allow for that type of development and support that type of development.
I don't think we're putting a hotel in a municipal center, but as far as, walkable housing and type 2 housing and stuff, that would be encouraged around a city center like the municipal center, is my understanding of it.
Yes, where the zoning permits it to happen. So if any rezonings would happen, it would have to come to the city council first.
And then my last comment is just that I've suggested this before, is that because as part of this process, we're going to have to look at our zoning ordinances. And again, I recommend that we get our PISC involved in that, because there's a lot of expertise in that commission that could, I think, really help staff in developing zoning ordinances and that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stacy, Josh, and then Ken.
Thank you, Mayor, and Hank, and Kathy, and everybody on your team who spent, 6 years? I'm just reading through this. 9,000 survey responses, 10 focus groups, 12 public meetings, 8 planning commission workshops, 9 city, it goes on. And you have done a remarkable job. The document reads very well when you read it through. And the visuals and all of that really do a great job of telling the entire picture of our city. So I just want to commend you. You've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And I also appreciate some of the edits, being among the council members who represent the Bayfront. I see that you and your staff have done a great job kind of accentuating our Bayfront as a distinct coastal area, from our resort beach and from Sandbridge, because while we share a lot of the same attributes and challenges, they're distinct parts of our community, and I know people will come to appreciate that over time. So, in line with Councilmember Cummings' comments, and it's been I think it was just a comment that I had the last time you came before us, was just simply that, words in any of our planning documents, and in particular our comp plan, they can send a signal beyond this room. And I think what we as a council, and especially now and going forward as we confront the challenges that we have with water and environmental challenges, that we strive for balance and don't send unintentional signals. So I guess my question to you, and I've got a little bit more commentary to kind of round it out, but previously this area was called the municipal context area, was it not? Or something in that line? The courthouse context area. And my concern isn't isn't necessarily about the values behind this proposed change to the Green Line context area and naming it as such, but I think it's just worth asking, around the table, whether it actually and accurately reflects what is there now and what our policy intent is. Even if we haven't sharpened our policy intent yet, because we've got a lot of unanswered questions that we still have outstanding out there. So, I think we can support conservation and preservation and rural uses, but I don't know that necessarily requires a label that doesn't reflect what is there now. It's a whole host of non-rural critical uses that the community enjoys and is important to us. So medical, educational, municipal, retail, we've got sports uses. So I just kind of put that to all of us. And again, I don't want to, there is tremendous value in conservation and preservation, and especially our rural heritage. I just don't know that this sends the right signal about not only what this area currently is and has been, but what it should be as we kind of shape our policy decisions going forward.
Cash, did you have something?
I did. Thank you,
And
Mayor.
then Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Hank, for your presentation. Director Kathy Warren, thank you, as always. Just a question, and this is more from reading the draft, that the 2040 draft that is on my living room table. But the update, I'm not sure if it's in there. And the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention and to my colleagues' attentions is drudging in context of the 2040 plan, when drudging is going to be done, how drudging, what's the process for that? And the only reason I'm saying that is because, and this may be more for the city manager, is because in District 7, the residents are really hot on the topic of drudging. When is it happening? When can we expect it? What are the process? And so if that were somehow included in your community engagement, I think that's a vital piece, especially for homeowners that are surrounded by around lakes. So I don't know if that's for you, city manager, or for Mr. Hank.
How we coordinate dredging throughout the city typically falls on the operational side and not on the conceptual land use side. So we'll work with Public Works, because I think they're working with you to work in the town hall as well. So we can communicate to your district the timeline for dredging and what that process looks like. And we can also talk to our comms office about getting information out regarding dredging in the city as well.
Okay. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Barbara, Michael, Worth, Amelia.
I know we had all of these beginning meetings with the public and so forth, but now to get the feedback from the public as to how well they think we have put it together. All right, that will come how? Will we each be meeting with people from our districts to hear what people think about the proposals, or where in this process will the public be able to say, okay, we think you've done a good job with this, but we do think you ought to change this. So when is that going to occur?
So that has already taken place. We've been out to the public over the last 6 months. We've invited the public to all of our planning commission workshops. We've accepted comments online and verbally, and we had our 2 large public meetings back in, I think it was late summer or September. And then we've gone through several iterations of the plan since our final large public engagement.
So we've already done that. And
Yes.
so now we're just saying to people, this is what's going to be voted on, and we'll either vote yes or no.
So we've had a lot of public engagement where we've asked our public to help shape this, and they've done that, and we've provided online every time that we've We have put out another draft for additional comment. So yes, we are at the point where Planning Commission can consider it and then pass it along to City Council for a
So if we
recommendation.
get positive from our people, then we feel comfortable in voting for it. If we get negative from our people, we say we still need to do some more work.
I mean, that would be at the discretion of Planning Commission and City Council.
Yeah, I think, that, Barbara, don't forget, there will be a public hearing and input with planning commission. And then the night of our vote, there will also be,
Well, at one point, we had a policy that we had a 3-process vote. We would present something at one meeting. We would hear from the public at the second meeting, and then we would vote at the third meeting. But we've kind of gotten away from that so that we do it all in one meeting. But that process allowed us to have some time in between when we heard the public and we made adjustments. But when we do it all in one meeting, we're hearing the public and then we have to vote, and we don't get to say, well, we just heard you and so forth, because people do, well, everybody looks at something maybe in a different way, but I think our old process of using a 3-vote process or a 3-meeting process for a vote on something like this is really important, because if we have a public hearing and then as soon as the people sit down, we vote, we haven't had a chance to adjust anything that we've heard in that public hearing. And they tend to say, well, we came down and we spoke, but nobody listened to us. And so we've got to make sure we have provided for that opportunity. And I don't see how we do it when we do everything in one public hearing and vote at the same public hearing.
Hey, with due respect, Mrs. Henley, this has been an ongoing process for a considerable time.
I know that.
With significant input. And don't forget, I'm sure we will have the input that the planning commission gets during their meeting. So that in fact would be getting preemptive information from the public before we have our meeting. But believe me, this has been an extensive vetted process that I think we should feel comfortable with. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. One thing that I would like to discuss, and I was sort of thinking about that procedural discussion, but moving on from that, because we do have public hearings and then a separate vote another time. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for public input, as you know, correctly noted, Mayor, in addition to the robustness of this process. I just kind of want to emphasize or ask a question about the legal role of a comprehensive plan as it relates to land use. And could you provide clarity how that fits in? What is a comprehensive plan versus an ordinance versus a zoning category? And how are those documents used to shape and inform and constrain land use decisions?
So I'll take that if it's all right. The comprehensive plan is just that. It is a aspirational planning guide. It will guide the staff in making recommendations to you regarding specific planning applications, and it is a guide to you as you consider those applications. It is not a law. It does not require 100% adherence, but if a decision is inconsistent with the plan, it does make it more open to challenge if there are not legitimate reasons for not following the plan. It is not an ordinance. It is not the zoning ordinance. It is just a conceptual plan, but trying to stay true to that is helpful in the event there is controversy regarding action taken.
Yeah, and I think that's an important notation to make as this process continues to unfold and to thankfully move forward. Because in a lot of the land use conversations that I've observed in the last approaching 7 years, the comprehensive plan is frequently referenced. And it is important because, of course, it was created by professionals in consultation with the Planning Commission and importantly, citizens across the city of Virginia Beach. And it should be relied upon as a guiding document. But having acknowledged that fact, there are moments when emergent scenarios arise, such as the affordable housing crisis, such as critical transportation needs develop, unfold, or change, where a deviation from that aspirational plan is a necessity for the public good. And I think it's really important as we have conversations about the development and about any potential approval of a comprehensive plan that we go into it with a full understanding about what it means and how it plays a role in these really important land use decisions. So I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Stiles. Since we're on slide 22, I would just like to take the opportunity to note, and I'll now also ask another procedural question. This was changed, I guess, at some point in the development from the courthouse context area to the Green Line context area. In my view, I just want to associate myself with the remarks that were made by Councilman Schulman for consistency, for the broadest understanding of what that context area is actually utilized for in land use terms. I think it was important that it remain as the courthouse context area. And that would also be my request. And how would that occur if an adjustment like that were to be made? And also, could you just help me understand, just for some clarifications, that dark purple dot in the middle is the courthouse corner?
Yes.
Is that what that says? So that's where we're sitting now?
Center. Actually, we have a closer up one at
Slide
the end of
11.
the slides. So that's the municipal center center.
And then if you could go back to slide 22, what it would show is, I want to make sure that I understand, there's a little bump out sort of on the top right. Is that Lansdowne?
On the top right.
Yeah, the little purple.
Oh, that's TCC.
Oh, that's TCC.
Yes, sir.
So, and then where's the hospital?
It is in that little purple, the top.
That's the hospital. And Innovation Park is there?
Sorry,
Blue area. Oh,
Blue stripe there.
oh, that area. Okay, that's what's known as Innovation Park. Where's Princess Anne Athletic Complex? And then where's the golf courses?
Good.
So,
Way to go, Kat.
should I go on?
Exactly. Oh, that's nice. I like it.
Should I go on?
Amphitheater.
Oh, where's the amphitheater? The amphitheater is in that other little purple bump out?
It's in there. That's it right there.
Where's Operation Smile?
Exactly.
And so what I'm illustrating here is the diversity of use that's part of the courthouse context area, and why I think it's important that it remain consistently named, and I agree with Mr. Schulman for that. Thank you.
Okay, Warren.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Morrison, Ms. Warren, for the presentation. This looks familiar because you did present this to my community meeting a little over a week ago, and I appreciate that because we do need to get this out in the public. But I just want to join in on the conversation about this particular slide and the context area, because even the courthouse area, as we just talked about, the number of city assets that are contained in this area, it's huge. And so I'm going to end this with a question, but the sports district that we deferred for 60 days last Tuesday for next month, that's in this area too. So it's a big sports tourism possibility, in addition to all the other assets that Councilman Berlucci just listed, including, of course, the courthouse area where we're now. So I'm not sure the Green Line context area does reflect it. Maybe the courthouse context area does describe it, but even then it doesn't. But It's a huge part of the city. It's an important part of the city. So my question is, I did see a report, I don't know if it's official or not, but as a part of this plan, or is it contemplated that an additional 7,000 new residents would live in this context area? Did I hear that correctly? No, doesn't look like it.
I don't think so, but I can look that.
Can we check into that?
I'll check that for you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's okay.
All right, Amelia, and then.
Thank you again, both of you, for the comprehensive plan. If you go to page 27, I just wanted to clarify, because you mentioned centers,
Yes, ma'am.
and right now with District 4, we cross the regional, the town center, and Burton Station, the city centers. Now, how is that all going? Because I began looking at this snake-like design you have. How does that all pull together? If you can explain a little bit more.
Sure. So
Corridor.
yes, so these are all located on corridors that have public transit. So all of these centers are already served by public transit. There's the 3 different types of centers. We have the regional center, city center, and local center. The vast majority of them are local centers, so they're going to be kind of that low-slung 3 to 4 story in height maximum kind of thing. So yeah, they're all the same size of a half-mile radius. We purposely excluded any sort of single-family zoning from these centers, so they are not applicable. They do not exist within the center. And then we provided extra buffering requirements and things like that where that does exist. So we did we're trying to kind of strike a balance between protecting the existing neighborhoods and allowing for redevelopment, especially along those major corridors where transit and businesses and commerce exist.
Right, and did I see near the town center, like you had a Passover, was there, looked like a train or something on there that you showed?
So I think I might have used a picture from the Pembroke SGA plan, which has very nice pictures, but the light rail is not a component of this plan.
That one, buddy.
Sorry, I would notice.
Way to go, man.
Okay, thank you. I think that is all that I had, to do with the land use, because in my area, people keep asking, we're running out of land, and then suddenly, there's all these other developments, so they're wondering, there's gotta be land, but from what you're saying, which is more true, that we're moving inward, and we're moving vertical.
Yes, ma'am.
So that people will understand, if they're wondering where there's extra land, we keep saying, we're running out of land. So that will help me explain that in our meeting coming up. Thank you.
So can we go to slide 11, Hank? As everybody else said, you two, very nicely presented. We appreciate it, all the work. So I also was struck by something here, and I think we had talked about it before, and it's echoing my 2 council members' earlier comments about this. So you look, and it says coastal, right? And then it says inland, and it says rural, and then we say green line. It's not in context with the rest of the terms, in my opinion. And as I've spent my whole life here, that area is the courthouse for me. I understand Councilman Bellucci showed quite well that there's a lot more going on there now. But as far as anybody that has grown up here, I would think we'd call it the courthouse complex or, area for us, the 5 mile stretch. I mean, I can go on and on, So I thought we had said it was going to be the courthouse area. I could be wrong on that. But for the way we have the rest of it named, I don't think the green line, because a lot of our public doesn't know what the green and blue line means, but they know what the courthouse means, and I think they even understand that you got Spa and Prince Anne and, all that stuff is still part of their thought process when you head out this direction. So I just felt like that should be said, is that to me is the way this is worded and how you would remember it, to me, that would be the courthouse area. It will, whether we call it the Green Line or not, I will be calling it the courthouse area. So, thanks.
That makes sense. Michael, and then Barbara, did you want to? Okay, then Rosemary after Michael, I'm sorry.
Mine will be very quick. This is a follow-up to what I said, and it's, I think, a natural follow-up to what Councilmember Hutchison asked. I think I need to understand more procedurally what the next steps are to make that adjustment. And can we provide that direction now?
I think you can express your concerns here, and obviously, staff will relay those concerns to the planning commission, because they still have to have their public hearing to bring this back to you. And I would assume that at that point, either they would make the change in what they recommend back to you, or you would have the ability to do it when in fact it comes to you for final approval.
Okay. Rosemary.
So I want to say I'm in agreement with a lot of the comments that have been made here about this green line context area. I mean, I totally agree, Hutch. People get very confused with the green line, and a lot of them don't even know what the blue line is. They have no idea about the blue line. And I think people get confused between the green and the blue. And they think that below the green line, nothing is supposed to happen. And as Councilman Bellucci pointed out, there's a lot of things that has happened in this area. And I think it sort of sets the tone that when you say it's the green line, folks think that nothing is supposed to happen in that area. And I totally agree that everybody knows where the courthouse is. We all know where the courthouse is. And there's no confusion with that. So I'm in agreement with a lot of the people who've spoken today that I would like for it to go back to what it was before, the courthouse area, context area. And I'm glad, Michael, that you asked about where we go from here as far as, so we just let the staff know what our comments are, because there may be some other little things here and there that we may want to weigh in on. And so the process for that is to let the planning staff know, or how would we do that?
So, Mr. Mayor, specifically for the context area, we'll take it as council's asking us to ask the planning commission to go back to the courthouse context area. As Mark said, obviously it's the planning commission's choice, but ultimately it becomes your choice after all. But we'll take that as us asking direction for us to ask the planning commission to make a change from calling the green line to the context area. And as council mentioned before, and as we noted as well, we are working to define the blue line as well as part of this comprehensive plan. As far as any other comments regarding the comprehensive plan, I think if council communicates that to us, we'll communicate accordingly to the planning commission ahead of their meeting for if there's any unnecessary adjustments that need to be made before they take their action to advise you.
And I'm going to say, the work that everyone put into this has been Herculean. I mean, you really deserve a huge round of applause and credit for all that you've done. And we really appreciate it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be our comprehensive plan. So that's what we need to make. Thank you so much for all of it. It's just staggering, all the work and the public input that you've done.
Thank you.
Well said, Rosemary. Barbara?
Well, I'll comment on this courthouse area, but then I had another one. Well, we don't even call it the courthouse anymore. We're calling it the municipal center. And so, I mean, I've lived here all my life too, and the courthouse is a very small area. This is a much larger area that goes all the way up to Dam Neck. Maybe Green Line isn't the right name, but I don't think courthouse is either. So I think this is going to be something that's going to be one of those differences of opinion on these names, because the courthouse to me is a very small area where the courthouse school, the courthouse, stuff right there at that intersection, but it doesn't go this far. all the way over to Chesapeake and so forth. It's not the courthouse. So we've got to come up with another name. On slide 28, when you have these corridors with your little purple sign, you've worked with them so much, you know what each one of them is, but I have a hard time reading those and knowing what it is exactly. Do you have someplace where you have named each of these little circles that you could just have a list of pages?
Yes, ma'am. They are in the back of the draft of the comp plan. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
Every single center
Yeah,
has their.
thank you,
is
because
uploaded.
I've had a hard time trying to figure it out.
That is completely understandable. Yes, they're in the back.
Okay, anybody else at this time? You know,
Just want to say, I hear what Ms. Henley's saying, and I'm certainly not saying that that's the whole thing. It's just my mindset of where it is. So, yes, ma'am, I hear you on that.
Yeah, but one way or the other, we'll get to a plan B on that. All right, thanks very much, and once again, kudos on all your work.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the next presentation will be given by Stanley Smith. He's Engineering Support Administrator for Public Works. He's going to brief City Council on our draft recommendations to you all as it relates to Smart Scale, the applications, the projects we want to submit for an application for Smart Scale consideration. All right. So Stanley, go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for your time today. I'm here to brief you on Smart Scale Round 7. I'll be giving you a brief overview of the program, as well as some previous round results that we've gotten, as well as the proposed projects that we're proposing for Round 7. As you can see on the screen here, Smart Scale is Virginia's largest transportation grant program. SMART and Smart Scale stands for the System Management and Allocation of Resources for Transportation. The program accepts applications biannually, so every other year. Applications are scored and awarded using a metric-based system. You can see on the right is the metrics that are used in the scoring, starting from the top, 5% for economic development, 15% for safety, 10% for environmental quality, 25% for accessibility, and 45% for congestion. So as you can see, there's a high focus on congestion relief in this area. Our evaluation measures are shared with the Northern Virginia area, which is Category A, which, as I mentioned, focuses on congestion relief. Land use typically, or in rounds 1 through 5, land use was also included as a measured category that has been split into safety and accessibility, but it still uses a multiplier. I'll also note that resiliency, while it's not factored directly into the score, still remains a consideration during the scoring. Local matches are not required for Smart Scale. They do help our scores if we do have a local match. The Smart Scale request factors directly into the score. So if there's a local match included, it can reduce your request and improve your score. So previous rounds, takeaways. Rounds 1 through 5, overall we've been awarded 16 projects for just shy of $162 million over the first 6 rounds. The available funding for each round is ranged anywhere from $800 million to $1.7 billion. The rounds 1 and 2 focus more on larger projects. Rounds 3 through 5 kind of shifted towards more smaller projects around the state. Round 6, the smaller projects continue to score well, and medium projects in the 20 million or less range also scored well in round 6. Rounds 1 through 5, just to note, limited traffic counts to current year traffic counts. Round 6, VDOT shifted to 7 years into the future so that we can account for expected growth. That's expected to continue in round 7, so we can use additional growth in our traffic counts. And then innovative designs have scored well on all rounds and are expected to continue to score well. Innovative designs, think Indian River, Kempsville type of intersection improvements. For round 7 upcoming, we're expecting $800 million to $1.2 million available. Those funds will be available in FY32 and FY33. They'll be federal funds. Small to medium-sized projects, about $20 million or less, are expected to continue scoring well. Traffic count requirements, as I mentioned, will still look into the 7 years into the future. And then innovative designs and bike and pedestrian projects are expected to continue to score well. So with that, I'll jump into this. This slide shows a overview of the 6 rounds of awards that we've received. Previously, as I mentioned before, we've been awarded 16 projects, just shy of 162 million total. As you can see in the local commitment column, as we've gone through the rounds, the local commitments have decreased generally each round. And just to give some context, the statewide averages for rounds 1 through 5 was about 1.1 billion available, 383 applications submitted, and 156 awards across the state. Round 6 was 1 billion available. However, the applications and awards decreased quite a bit. There was 270 applications statewide and 53 awarded. I will note in round 6, there's also some funding used out of the Smart Scale pot for Hurricane Helene efforts. This slide shows a more detailed list of projects that we've received over the first 6 rounds. As I mentioned in round 6, we received Virginia Beach Trail Phase 4 for just shy of $24 million. So if you have any questions on those, we'll be happy to take at the end. Moving into Smart Scale round 7, which is the current round. Every other year, we sit down with a committee of members from Public Works, Engineering, Public Works Operations, Parks and Recreation, Economic Development and Planning to select projects to study. The committee developed a list of 10 projects you can see there on the left of the slide across the city based on grant metrics mostly. And after performing some mock scoring of the projects as well as focusing on funding existing projects with federal funds this round as well as council priorities, the 5 projects that rose to the top and recommended are shown on the right side of the screen, which are Alaskan Road Phase 3, Lynnhaven Parkway at Potters Road and I-264, Pacific Avenue at 22nd Street left turn lane, Thalia Creek I-264 pedestrian bridge, and Virginia Beach Trail Phase 3. And I'll go into each one of these in a little bit more detail. Before I get to the projects, this is a map of the candidate projects that we looked at. The yellow stars are the projects that we're recommending for applications. The red circles are projects that were screened out during the screening process. But you can see there's projects from across the city. So the first project that I'll go into is Alaskan Road Phase 3. As a reminder, this is the overview of the Alaskan Road phasing plan. Alaskan Road Phase 3 is the westernmost piece, which is from Phillip Avenue to Republic Road. That's the project that we're proposing to apply for Smart Scale this year. Alaskan Road Phase 1A and Bridge have recently been completed with construction to remove the feeder roads. Alaskan Road Phase 1B is partially funded with RSCP funding, and we have a funding plan in place with that project. And then Alaskan Road Phase 2 is the easternmost section, which goes from Oriole Drive to the roundabout, which is not currently funded. So Alaskan Road Phase 3, as I mentioned, would widen Alaskan Road from 4 to 6 lanes from Republic Road to Phillips Avenue. It would remove the frontage roads along that section, continuing the improvements from Phase 1A and the bridge. So convert the intersection at Regency Drive also to continuous green T, allowing for better traffic flow through that segment. It would install dedicated turn lanes along that section, and as well as construct a 10-foot wide shared use path. Minor right-of-way acquisition is required. However, the majority of it has already been required. The benefits of this project is it completes the westernmost segment of Alaskan Road. As I mentioned, continuing the Alaskan 1A and bridge improvements. It improves safety by removing the frontage roads and also enhances bicyclist and pedestrian activity. Currently, we're estimating the project at $55 million total costs, and we would be requesting from Smart Scale $23.5 million. And I'll get into some more of the local commitments at the end as well. This is, I know it's hard to see on the screen, but this is a concept of the overall plan for Laskin Road Phase 3, which would, as I mentioned, widen the section from 4 to 6 lanes. The next project is Lynn Haven Parkway at Potters Road and I-264. This project would essentially realign northbound Lynn Haven Parkway between Potters Road and the interstate to provide better access to the interstate and improve traffic flow. It would add an exclusive right turn lane on an I-264 on-ramp and construct right turn lanes for westbound onto Lynn Haven Parkway and northbound Potters Road. The benefits of the project is it's a low-cost improvement. The majority of the improvements are within existing pavement, so there's not a lot of new pavement to be done. It reduces congestion and improves access to I-264, so regionally improves the access there. And it also increases safety during peak traffic period. This project was selected in coordination with VDOT doing a STAR study. STAR study stands for Strategically Targeted Affordable Roadway Solutions. This is a study that we've been working on with VDOT over the last year or so to develop this project and put forward, hopefully, towards a smart scale project application. This is kind of a concept of the project. So just to orient you, north would be from left to right. East and west is from top to bottom on the screen. Heading north on Lynn Haven Parkway, there's currently three through lanes. This would realign that section to have 4 through lanes. So essentially the rightmost through lane would carry on north through Potters Road and provide a access to eastbound I-264. The through lane next to that would continue on to westbound I-264. So as it is right now, there's only 3 through lanes that goes through the intersection, so this would provide an additional lane to help with access on the 264. North of Potters Road, it would shift the existing median and left turn lane to the top, towards the top of the screen, as you see here, within existing pavement. The third project is Pacific Avenue at 22nd Street. This would construct a left turn lane at 22nd Street, providing access to the interstate at the oceanfront area. This would implement roadway improvement. It would be improvements between 20th and 23rd Street and install pedestrian refuge areas along that section as well. Significant right-of-way is required in this section, and it's located within a priority zone of VDOT's Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. Benefits of the project: it's the dedicated left turn lane that, as I mentioned, provides direct access to the interstate, as well as it addresses congestion by increasing capacity and adding a dedicated left turn lane, as well as safety in that area. And it would improve traffic flow for Atlantic Park and other oceanfront events and venues in that area. Right now we're estimating the project cost at $20 million and proposing to request $10 million from Smart Scale. This is a concept of the project. As you can see, the improvements would stretch from 20th to 23rd Street, but the main left turn lane to be constructed would be between 22nd Street and 21st Street. The fourth project is the Thalia Creek I-264 pedestrian bridge. This would be a pedestrian bridge to span I-264 that would connect basically the town center area with the Mount Trashmore area. This would essentially connect to existing sections of the Thalia Creek Greenway. As you can see on the map on the right side there is the Thalia Creek Master Plan. This would connect basically into that. The project that we're proposing would construct the bridge and then connect to existing pedestrian infrastructure on Bendix Road and eventually up to Bonnie Road. Right now, we're estimating the project at about $42.5 million, and we're asking to request the full amount from Smart Scale. This project was coordinated with Parks and Recreation, and some of the benefits for the project is it would, as I mentioned, connect to the Thalia Creek Greenway overall master plan, and enhances amenities for recreational tourism, underserved communities, and workforce connectivity. This slide is kind of a closer look at that plan. The blue line is an overview of the high-level concept plan, with the bridge across I-264 connecting to Mount Trashmore on the right side of the screen. And then the last project is VB Trail, Virginia Beach Trail Phase 3. Just as a reminder, this is an overview of the full trail improvements that have been put forth or proposed. On the left side of the screen is Phase 1, which goes from Constitution Drive to the Norfolk City line. That project is funded through SS4A and is in design now. Phase 2 goes from Constitution Drive to South Plaza Trail, which is currently unfunded. We're looking at other grant opportunities for that section. Phase 3 goes from South Plaza Trail to London Bridge Road. That's the section that we're proposing to apply for Smart Scale Round 4 this time, or excuse me, Smart Scale Round 7 this time. Phase 4 is from London Bridge Road to Bird Neck Road. That project was previously funded with Smart Scale Round 6 funding. And then Phase 5 is partially constructed with the Norfolk Avenue Trail, the existing Norfolk Avenue Trail, and then would eventually connect to Rudy Loop improvements that are proposed. So Virginia Beach Trail Phase 3 is about 2.3 miles of 14-foot wide shared use path from South Plaza Trail to London Bridge Road, as I mentioned. It's on already owned city right-of-way on the former Norfolk Southern Corridor, Railroad Corridor. The project is estimated at about $30 million, and we're proposing to request the full amount from Smart Scale. There's no acquisition required. As I mentioned, the right-of-way is already owned by the city. Some of the benefits is it is identified as a priority project in the Virginia Beach Active Transportation Plan. So it continues the plan to fully fund the VB Trail for its full limits. And it also enhances amenities for underserved communities, recreational tourism, and workforce connectivity. And this project was also coordinated with Parks and Recreation. So with that said, that's the 5 projects. So an overview of the funding strategy that we are recommending. As you can see in the table at the top of the screen, we're recommending $8.5 million total in local committed funding, and that would be on the Pacific Avenue 22nd Street project. A couple of overviews of what you see on the screen here. 2 projects are requested in the $10 million or less range, which would be Lynnhaven Parkway and Pacific Avenue projects. Those projects, as I mentioned before, 10 million or less have shown to score well in the Smart Scale program. 1 project's in the 20 million range, which is Laskin Road Phase 3. With the allocations that we have planned and have received from the RCP program, it shows a good federal commitment to that project. And then there's 2 projects requesting a larger amount, which would be VB Trail Phase 3 and Thalia I-264. However, those projects have shown to score well and be awarded using less local commitments. As I mentioned on the first slide, the funds are FY32 and FY33, so any local committed funds are not needed until that time frame. So next steps, VDOT, Public Works leadership, Parks and Rec leadership, the city manager and MLT have all been briefed prior to this meeting today. Obviously, we have the city council briefing today. After that, we have the Smart Scale portal opens on March 2nd for pre-applications. Pre-applications are due April 1st. Between the April and June timeframe, VDOT screens pre-applications to continue applications onto the final application stage. Final application stage will then open on June 1st. We plan to come back to City Council in the June timeframe to request resolutions of support for each Smart Scale project, which are required with the applications. And then final applications will be due August 1st. And then we'll find out any awarded projects in the January 2027 timeframe at the CTB meeting. So with that, I'll open up with any questions and any feedback.
Once again, a lot of work was put into this. Michael, Stacy.
Thank you. Well, all of the projects are really good and really needed. And I'll join the mayor in complimenting you and your colleagues on the thoughtful and thorough, not only presentation, but most importantly, formulation of these requests. Of course, the one that I'm very excited about is the project that connects Dahlia Creek, Town Center, VB Trail with Mount Trashmore. It's expensive. I think it's $42 million is the request. It sort of seems crazy. I do have a question about that, but before I get to the question, I'm just going to pontificate for a little bit. Just kidding. But I want to make some points. You mentioned that it's recreational workforce connecting underserved communities, but it's in addition to those things, it's a north-south connection that's safe. And that's 100% needed in the context of VB Trail. Independence Boulevard, to a lesser degree Rosemont Road, can be quite dangerous for pedestrians and for bicyclists. But Mount Trashmore, among many other things, is a safety, is a haven for safety. It's a safe place, and it's a welcoming place, and a lot of citywide activities that residents and visitors enjoy occur there. And so as we have an east-west connection, it's equally essential in my mind that we have that north-south connection that's safe. It connects not only districts 3 and 4, but also, 8 and 10, 1 and 10. I mean, it's pretty crazy how many connections that would forge, and is why I've come to believe that it's probably one of the most important unfunded priorities that we've contemplated around this table since the time that I've been here, especially in relation to connectivity. We just heard a presentation about our comprehensive plan and the transportation issues related to that and prioritizing connectivity. And I just don't see how we can prioritize that sort of east-west connectivity without also the north-south portion of it. But why is it so expensive? Is that the bridge mostly?
It's mostly the bridge.
If you go to the slide, and I think it's slide 16, there's a lot of these blue lines, and I guess if you could just help me understand what that blue line actually means.
Sure. So across the interstate is the actual bridge. When you get to the left side of the interstate on the screen, a lot of that is already existing infrastructure. When you get closer to kind of the buildings on the lower part, we highlighted it here just so you can see kind of what the full scale would be. A lot of what the cost would be, a lot of it's the bridge, especially since it's crossing an interstate. There's going to be a lot of coordination with VDOT to install that bridge, a lot of traffic, MOT and traffic cost to keep traffic flowing during the installation of that bridge. And then there's also a lot of inflation that's included in that cost. You have to remember this is 6 years out to the funding. So, and that's to start design. So you're looking at maybe 8 to 10 years out to start construction. So that it adds a lot of inflation to that number.
We're not necessarily retreading what already exists. So there's a lot of existing infrastructure there that.
Correct.
Is there any you've already factored that in, any sort of value that can be attained from the existing infrastructure.
Yes.
It's really just mostly the bridge. But I hope we'll keep it in mind and find a way to make this. Hopefully they'll fully fund it. That would be really fantastic. And if there's anything that we can do to support that, I think it's just vitally important. We're on the right track. We're doing a lot of really amazing things. I also want to compliment Parks and Rec for their role in helping to develop it, but just can't emphasize enough the important role that Mount Trashmore plays in our lives, and how much we need a safe crossing into that part of the city. You know, we could, Jennifer and I could ride our bikes to lunch in town center. Yeah, 8 years.
Thank you, Josh.
Stacy?
Can you go to slide 19?
Sure.
It's just educational on my part, I'm sure. But when we look at Pacific Avenue and total cost of $20 million, and we're looking at recommended local funding of 8.5, why is that versus other sources of funding?
For that project, specifically, because of the right-of-way that's included or needed on that project, VDOT looks at that as more of a risk to that project. So if we can put some local funding towards that project and decrease our smart scale ask, it helps our chances of getting it funded. Just because it's a lesser amount that we're asking for mostly.
It's more right-of-way acquisition.
A lot of that cost is right-of-way acquisition.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for the briefing. I know Councilmember Berlucci just asked you in a manner of speaking, but I'd really like to know if there's anything that we can do beyond sending up a resolution to approve these. For example, for the bridge spanning I-264, which I also I think is critical. I mean, those north-south connections, we just don't have them, not safe ones, and certainly not enough of them. So would letters from individual council members included in the packet help? I know it is a large sum of money, but I think we need to push really hard for this.
So, Councilman, if you may, I stood up to add a little bit of context to the previous question about why we're offering $8.5 million on this. It's important to remember that Smart Scale is a scored. We're in competition with all of the projects across the whole Commonwealth, and as Stanley pointed out in the very beginning, that score is weighted based upon a number of factors. And so for Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, 45% of that score is based upon congestion mitigation. So that is not true for RVA or for the western part of the state or for many other the different parts of the state. Their metric, what they're scoring against, is different than what Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads are. So the weighted totals are compared, though, across. So, for instance, and I don't know what all the other scoring formulas are, but let's say that RVA or Fredericksburg has a project and it's scoring very well in economic development because that's where their scoring metrics are. And it's important that our projects have to score well in congestion mitigation. So when we look at Pacific Avenue or we look at the flyover project, we have to recognize that it's 45% of the weight of that score is going to be counted on congestion mitigation. If we don't think that it's going to offer enough in the way of congestion mitigation, the way that we can adjust the score is to buy down the cost reward, right? So how much does it cost the Commonwealth to accomplish this project versus what is the reward? That's the way that we buy the project back into competition. So with Pacific Avenue turn lanes, what we're trying to do is buy ourselves into the competitive range. If we didn't offer anything on that, it probably wouldn't score very well because the congestion, while it's important to our folks at the resort area, compared to, say, what's going on in Fairfax, it's not going to compete. So that's why we're trying to buy our way into that. Similarly, on the flyover, we didn't offer any contribution on this one because honestly, we just don't know how it's going to compete. What we have seen in the past is that typically trail projects and bicycle path, those types of things, they usually compete very well. They score very well. 42 million is a big ask, though. I don't know that letters from interested groups doesn't typically count into the scoring process. They do require that we have a letter from City Council saying, yes, we support the project. And that's more so that they understand that if there's local funds or if there's a shortage, that City Council's already bought into it and that they're going to cover the gaps and help make this up. If council wanted us to be more competitive on this, I would suggest then that we try to offer some type of a funding contribution to similar to what we proposed at Pacific would be to buy down that gap. I hope that answers your question.
It does,
It
and
kind of
just
ties the two of them together.
Just as a follow-up, looking at this timing, the pre-application is due April, so we wouldn't have necessarily decided on an approved budget at that point, but should a decision be made between that time or now and say August 1st, when the final application is due, we would be able to supplement
Yes, sir.
the application with the new information.
Scoring is based upon the information that's provided in August, not the information that's provided in April. April is the information that we usually give to VDOT. VDOT comes back and says, hey, we reviewed your applications. We find some holes in it. We think maybe you haven't considered this or you overweighted that, something along the lines of that. But then we always can adjust our strategy and adjust our contributions or even our applications. We can pull projects. I don't think we can add them. They have to be in
No, not after the pre-application
They have to be in
stage.
the pre-app, yes.
Okay, and then I promise this is my last one, and this is getting a little bit far afield, but when that blue line comes back down and goes through what I guess would be the Constitution Drive extended into the business complex down there, is that road public or private?
Bendix Road is public, yes. But now there is some private property at the end, and there will
Get some easements.
There will be some right-of-way acquisition, and that figures into that $42 million, and that as to what we'd have to.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Michael?
Just one thing to add to that. $42.5 million is very expensive, and just upon first glance, it's hard to imagine that it would cost that much, but I've seen a lot of other projects, I guess that's just what it costs across the interstate. But if we don't get moving on this now, the other observation I would make is it's going to be a lot more the longer we delay this crossing, and we need this crossing. We need this pedestrian and bicycle crossing. So just an additional observation I would make to this. Sooner we can get it done, the less expensive it will be.
Yes, sir.
Good point. Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Moving on.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, members of council, the last presentation will be provided by Ms. Alcock in the planning department. It's going to be a glimpse on the pending planning items that will come to you at your next voting meetings.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. As the city manager just stated, I'm here this afternoon to present the planning items that will be considered at your March hearings. So looking first at your March 17th agenda, item 1 is a street closure request for a portion of an unimproved 15-foot wide alley adjacent to 622 Surfside Avenue in District 5. Several similar requests have been reviewed and approved by the City Council within this same block. The applicant has obtained a quitclaim deed from the property owner to the east, and as such, the entire closure area would be incorporated into 622 Surfside Avenue. Consistent with the previous approvals, staff is recommending a minimum 15-foot wide public drainage easement over the entire closure area. Staff has not received any opposition to this request, and the Planning Commission recommended approval on their consent agenda. Item 2 is a modification of conditions request for the Cavalier Golf and Yacht Club located at 1052 Cardinal Road in District 6. A CUP for an outdoor recreation facility was granted in 1997, but that approval was specific to tennis courts. The current request is to repurpose and expand the existing facilities to include 4 covered and 2 uncovered pickleball courts. The proposed improvements would occur in 2 phases. The first, which is shown in yellow on the slide there, would include the 4 covered courts, and the second phase, shown in blue, includes the 2 uncovered courts. No outdoor lighting is proposed with this request. However, the covered courts will include lighting inside that covered structure. To minimize sound impacts, sound deadening material is proposed along the western edge of the courts, which is nearest to the adjacent residential properties. Staff has received 2 letters of support and 2 letters of opposition, with those in opposition noting concerns related to lighting, noise, and staffing. There were no speakers present at the Planning Commission hearing, and the Commission did recommend approval on consent. The next 2 items include a conditional rezoning and a subdivision variance request for 4916 Euclid Road in District 4. The applicant is requesting to rezone the 7,700 square foot parcel from R7.5 residential to A18 apartment district, as well as a subdivision variance for the lot width and street line frontage requirements. The subject parcel has a lot width and street line frontage of 77.44 feet, where 100 feet and 80 feet respectively are required. The applicant is proposing to develop the site with 3 multifamily units for an overall density of just under 17 units per acre. While the property is located within the Central Village District of the Pembroke SGA, the density study included in the Pembroke SGA plan does not recommend any changes or increased density for this location. The proffered concept plan includes the 10-foot wide landscape buffers that would be required to the north, east, and west, where the site abuts the adjacent R7.5 districts. The applicant is requesting a deviation to the minimum lot area and lot coverage requirements with this request to allow for a minimum lot area of 7,744 square feet, where 20,000 square feet would be required by ordinance, and a lot coverage of 66%, where a maximum lot coverage of 50% would be required by the ordinance. The required parking is met on site with a 2-car driveway and a 1-car garage provided for each unit. Additionally, the applicant is proposing an 11-foot wide right-of-way dedication with this proposal to accommodate both a 5-foot wide sidewalk and then space for future protected bikeways on Euclid Road. The images on the slide here show the exterior of the proposed units, which will have a maximum height of 35 feet and include a 6-foot tall privacy fence to further buffer from the adjacent residential properties. Staff has received 2 letters of support and 26 letters of opposition related to this request. Additionally, there were 2 speakers in opposition at the Planning Commission hearing who noted concerns with incompatibility with the surrounding neighborhood and an increase in traffic and congestion in the area. While staff was recommending denial of this request due to incompatibility with both the comp plan recommendations as well as the surrounding neighborhood, the Planning Commission ultimately recommended approval by a vote of 8-3.
Why?
So it was based on a couple of factors. So as I mentioned, while this site is located within the Pembroke SGA, that SGA plan specific to this parcel does not call for any changes or increased in density. Staff did not find the proposal, when you're looking, it is a smaller site, which is why they need that deviation to the minimum lot area and the lot coverage. They felt it was a smaller site for what was being proposed, and it's not compatible. So the surrounding neighborhood is a mix of 1- and 2-story single-family dwellings. So we just felt there was some incompatibility with the area and with the recommendations of the SGA plan.
And the height as well?
With the height that they're proposing, it would be a max height of 35 feet, which is consistent with the max height for a residential district.
And how would you all look at if it came to a point of a duplex? Just asking. Is that more compatible?
We could certainly evaluate that. I would imagine with a duplex, the applicant might not need as many of the deviations that they're requesting, but we'd have to look at the concept plan that would be submitted with that and evaluate that independently.
And this is coming up.
Yes,
Our
ma'am.
next meeting.
Yes, ma'am, March 17th.
Okay, is there a possibility to, discuss that further just before that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, item 5 is another conditional rezoning request, this one for 2 parcels along Greenwell Road. This is adjacent to Station 4 in District 9 and is within the Shore Drive overlay. The applicant is seeking to rezone the property from R5R residential to conditional A12 to construct a 6-unit multifamily development for an overall density of 11.25 units per acre. The site is currently developed with a duplex and a triplex. The proposal includes 2 buildings, each with 3 units. A 1-car garage and a 2-car driveway will be provided for each unit. The required landscape buffer is shown along the northern property line, adjacent to the residential properties to the north, and a privacy fence is proposed along the south and west property lines. While the active transportation plan calls for an 11 to 12-foot wide shared use path along Greenwell Road, due to site constraints, the applicant is proposing to install a 6-foot wide sidewalk in its place. This proposal did receive support from the Bayfront Advisory Commission, and the applicant presented the proposal to the Chesapeake Beach Civic League, and we were told that no concerns were raised during that meeting. 2 letters of opposition were received citing concerns related to density, impact on the neighborhood, and an increase in traffic. There were a total of 4 speakers at the Planning Commission hearing. 2 had a neutral position, and then 2 were in opposition. Those in opposition had similar concerns that I just stated. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval on the regular agenda by an 11-0 vote. Item 6 is, yep, you're fine.
Caitlin, I wanted clarity. The existing use here, remind me, is 2 buildings with two residences in each of them, and then there's an additional, I guess, over the garage type of unit.
Right, there's
it's a total of 5.
a total of 5.
Okay, they're asking for 6.
Correct. Item 6 is a conditional use permit request for a bulk storage yard at 207 Parker Lane in District 3. The applicant intends to use the site largely as is to store tree servicing equipment and process timber materials. Additional landscaping will be installed near Parker Lane, and the applicant has placed an office trailer on the site to support the use. The proposed bulk storage yard is compatible with the site's location in both the greater than 75 decibel noise zone and the APZ1. The applicant has requested a deviation to the screening requirement to allow the use of the existing chain link fencing on the site and then supplement with new chain link fencing where needed. Staff is unaware of any opposition to this request, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by consent with 2 additional conditions. The first would prohibit the storage of materials in the area that is shown in red on the slide there, and then another condition would limit any stacking of material taller than 15 feet. Item 7 is another CUP request for a bulk storage yard, this one at 464 Progress Lane, again in District 3. This property was conditionally rezoned from R10 to conditional I1 in 2005. It is located in the greater than 75 decibel noise zone, accident potential zones 1 and 2, and is within the West Oceania Special Economic Growth Area, or SEGA 2. The applicant intends to develop the site with a 30,000 square foot office warehouse building, which is a by right use, and then a contractor laydown yard, which is the subject of this request. The applicant is seeking a deviation from the screening requirement along portions of the storage yard that are not visible from the right-of-way and are heavily screened by existing vegetation. The western edge of the storage yard, as well as portions of the southern edge, will be screened with a privacy fence as shown in red, as required by the ordinance. In response to comments from adjacent residential property owners and the Planning Commission, the applicant has provided a double row of evergreens as well as a privacy fence along the edge of the parking lot nearest to the residents of the Evergreens neighborhood to the east. And I'll go back, that's kind of up towards Progress Lane here. Staff received 2 letters of opposition, and there were 2 speakers in opposition at the Planning Commission hearing with concerns regarding noise, environmental and visual impacts, and a decrease to property values. While the Planning Commission requested a 30-day deferral of the item at their January hearing to allow the applicant time to address both the concerns raised by adjacent residential property owners and by the Commission, the Planning Commission did feel that the applicant had been responsive to those concerns and voted to recommend approval of the item at their February hearing.
Back one slide.
Sure.
I'm sorry. No.
Yes.
And who owns that preserved area?
That's the property owner.
The property
It's
owner.
the same property, yes. So Everything in green here is on the subject property and is proposed to be preserved with this request to provide additional buffer.
Okay, got it.
Item 8 is a CUP request for a family daycare home for property located at 677 Baker Road in District 4. The applicant is seeking approval to provide care for up to 12 children, ages 6 weeks to 12 years of age, within a 1,400 square foot townhouse. She also intends to offer overnight care on a limited basis to no more than 4 children. The applicant intends to fully enclose both the front and rear yard with a combination of an existing chain link fence, a new vinyl privacy fence, and then a vinyl picket fence with landscaping along Baker Road. Dark mesh fabric, which you can see in the lower photo there, will be added to the chain link fence. This is to satisfy requirements of the Department of Education to ensure the fence is not climbable for the children. Staff has recommended a condition that if and when the existing chain link fence needs to be replaced in the future, they would need to replace it with a material similar to the new fencing that's proposed with this application. There is one existing parking space at the rear of the site, which is accessed from the alley, and the applicant does intend to add 2 additional parking spaces for a total of 3 to support the use. Staff is recommending approval of no more than 8 children due to the limited parking and overall outdoor play area on the site. The Planning Commission did recommend approval, however, they bumped up that total number to up to 9 children. We have not received any opposition to this request, and we did get a petition of support with 11 signatures from nearby residents. Item 9, this is another conditional use permit request, this one for a bulk storage yard at 1361 Virginia Beach Boulevard in District 6. This item was deferred at your February 17th hearing, so for the sake of time, I won't run through all the details again. Just a quick reminder, this will be a bulk storage yard for a tow business. You can just see here the proposed site layout with the bulk storage yard in the back that is proposed to be fenced, and then additional landscaping proposed at the front of the site. Staff has received 4 letters of support, including one from the residential property owner to the rear of the site. Staff is unaware of any opposition, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by a 10-0 vote with 1 abstention. Right, these next few are kind of your standard CUP applications. We have several tattoo parlors and short-term rentals, so I'm going to kind of go through those a little bit more quickly than I would. So this first one here is a CUP request for a tattoo parlor at 3615 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Suite 102. This is in District 8. So the applicant intends to offer traditional tattooing within an existing suite from noon to 9 p.m. daily. Support was provided from 3 nearby businesses. Staff is unaware of any opposition, and the Planning Commission recommended approval on consent. Item 11 is another CUP request for a tattoo parlor at 2260 Seashore Shops Shopping Center, and that's in District 8. I practiced that one. As with the last application, this applicant also intends to offer traditional tattooing within an existing suite from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. 9 signatures of support received from nearby businesses. There was 1 speaker in opposition at the Planning Commission hearing who did just express concerns with the number of tattoo parlors within this general area. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by an 11-0 vote. Item 12 is another CUP request for a tattoo parlor at 4239 Holland Road, Suite 712 in District 10. This is again another request for a traditional tattoo parlor within an existing suite of the Timberlake Shopping Center. Proposed hours of operation are 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. We have not received any opposition to this request, and this item was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission on their consent agenda. The last few items are all CUP requests for short-term rentals. The first for 428 21st Street in District 6. This request is for a 2-bedroom unit, which would require 2 off-street parking spaces, both of which can be accommodated on site. There are no prior zoning complaints, violations, or previous rentals associated with this unit, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by consent. Item 14, again, is another short-term rental request for 516 22nd Street, Unit 200, again in District 6. This is for a 4-bedroom unit with 2 parking spaces provided on site, and the applicant has submitted an intent to lease off-site parking agreement for 2 spaces within the 25th Street garage. No prior zoning complaints, violations, or rentals. We have not received any opposition, and the Planning Commission recommended approval on consent. The final item on the March 17th agenda is a CUP request for a short-term rental at 413 21st Street in District 6. This is a 3-bedroom request, and all the parking can be accommodated on the site. No prior zoning complaints or violations associated with the site, and there has not been any documented stays since August of 2020. We did not receive any opposition, and the Planning Commission recommended approval by consent. Moving on to your March 24th agenda, there are a total of 2 items, both of which are part of one proposal. So this is a request for a modification of proffers and a conditional rezoning for property located off of Signature Drive in District 2. The subject request is related to an approximately 203-acre portion, which is shown in green on the slide there, of the larger 419.8-acre Villages at West Neck development, which is shown in white, that was approved by the City Council in 1999. Since the entire 203 acres was included with that 1999 approval, a modification of proffers is required specific to the 203 acres that are the subject of this request. Approximately 86 of those acres, which are outlined in black on the plan here, are proposed to be rezoned, with approximately 63 of those acres proposed to be rezoned to PDH2, and approximately 23 of those acres proposed to be rezoned to P1 Preservation District. If these requests are approved, approximately 136 of the 203-acre site will be P1, 63 acres will be PDH2, and just over 5 acres will remain PDH1, and that's shown in the blue area. That's the existing clubhouse at the site. The development will include a total of 143 single-family homes, which incorporate rural architectural elements as recommended in the Transition Area Design Guidelines. And these are just some examples of the housing styles there on the slide. While the proposed Preserve at West Neck development is the subject of this request, since this same area was included in the original Villages of West Neck development approved by council, staff evaluated this proposal holistically to avoid double counting any area. When initially approved, the Villages at West Neck development included just under 420 acres, 386 of which were considered developable. That project was approved for 974 units, which equates to a density of 2.52 units per acre. This proposal was modified in 2001, decreasing the total number of units to 934, which brought the approved density to 2.42 units per acre. This current request includes just over 203 acres, 140 of which are considered developable, and is proposing 143 additional units. If approved, this would increase the overall density to 2.79 units per acre. Looking now at the open space, the 1999 development included 45% open space, just over 41% of which was comprised of the golf course, which was not accessible to all residents of the Villages at West Neck, and that left 3.79% of that open space, so about 14.5 acres, that was accessible to all residents of the Villages at West Neck. While this current proposal represents a slight decrease in the overall open space, dropping to 40.1%, all of that open space will be accessible to residents both of the Preserve at West Neck as well as the Villages at West Neck. This does fall short, however, of the 50% open space recommendation that's found within the Transition Area Design Guidelines. The proposed development will generate the need for a traffic signal at the intersection of West Neck Road, Signature Drive, and Tin Barn Way. The applicant has included a proffer that the signal would be designed, installed, and operational at the applicant's sole expense prior to the first certificate of occupancy being issued for the dwellings. Due to the site's location within the Southern Rivers watershed, a preliminary drainage study was provided and reviewed by staff with this request. Staff did determine that the proposed stormwater design had the potential to meet all stormwater regulations, which would be facilitated through the site plan review process. The proposal does include approximately 3 additional acres of detention and retention areas. At the time this PowerPoint was drafted, staff had received 173 letters of support and 278 letters of opposition, one of which was from the Transition Area Interfacility Traffic Area Citizens Advisory Committee, who did not find the proposal to be consistent with the Transition Area Design Guidelines. There were a total of 45 speakers in attendance at the Planning Commission hearing. 22 of those were 23 in support of the proposal and 22 in opposition. Those in opposition had concerns with the inconsistency with the design guidelines, an increase in traffic and congestion, and particularly focusing on during the construction timeframe, and then environmental and stormwater impacts. While staff is recommending denial of the request based on the density and open space, after the hearing from the speakers, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval by a vote of 7-3 with 1 abstention. One quick thing I do want to note, it is our understanding that the applicant is working on some additional proffer language based on feedback that was received during the Planning Commission hearing. So you could have additional proffers that will be presented to you when this is heard. And Mayor, that concludes my briefing, and I'll stand by for any questions.
Any questions, Cash?
So thank you so much. Great presentation. Just a question about Harris and Lear. And this is not in my district, but we all weigh in on this. And so I've received tons of emails, tons of phone calls, right? Of I thought I was the only one. You guys too? Okay. Tough crowd. All right. So anyway, I guess what I'm driving home or asking, I live in Centerville. A major concern was, is this something that's going to be transferred to a private company? If it is, then would the city still have access to, and obviously that's the proper language, is that he's going to ensure, the company is going to ensure that the city, the residents still have access to it, like it is now a municipal golf course, or it's private. It's private.
Currently, there is no golf course. The golf course has been inactive for several years. This proposal involves rebuilding 9 holes of the golf course, and I believe those are intended to be available to the public.
Yes. Okay.
Anybody else at this point? You know, it's going to be controversial, but, you know, we'll hear both sides. Yeah, but, you know, once again, we took it to the 24th, because I think it might have been originally scheduled for the 17th, but 2 reasons. Number one, I'm going to be in London, on a trip with the Alliance, for military. And the other thing is we wanted to give adequate time. We expect a full gallery on this. And, but once again, I think it would be fair, to all concerned, if we went ahead and did it this way.
So when is it going to be heard?
The 24th.
March.
Yeah.
So
That'd be the only item on.
Yeah, Rosemary.
this will be a special meeting at the end of our normal workshop day. So we're going to extend the day, but because of the length that the Planning Commission had, and with Bobby being out of town, I thought this was a really good idea. And also, the staff is having to work really hard on these additional proffers, and because they have to be done 10 days before the hearing, it's going to give them more time and make things a little bit less stressful for them as well. So this, and there'll probably be more speakers than came out. Usually more comes out for us.
And then if we had that on a day with a crowded agenda, I don't think, this way we could just focus on the one area. Barbara?
I think that's good, because what happened at the Planning Commission, there were so many other items. I mean, and they were around, those people, and a lot of the people who had signed up to speak, particularly being older and so forth, just couldn't stay all until that hour at night. And so they had signed up to speak and had to leave. So I think having one item, knowing there are going to be this many speakers, is a very good move.
Yeah.
So the 24th of March.
And it will be a special meeting after our informal.
Okay, so it will be a 6 o'clock meeting?
It'll be a 6 o'clock, yes.
6 o'clock meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I think you suggested 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and start at 5, because, we have to anticipate that, that there will, we just want to make sure that everybody has the ability to.
Starting then at 5 o'clock,
5 o'clock.
So it'll
just so I
probably,
know what to tell people.
yep, it'll probably be pretty much right after we finish the workshop. Like it'll be a day like today where there's not a formal meeting. So it'll be the only item on the agenda that council's going to take up for voting consideration.
It's fair to everybody. Okay, all right, let's go, let me, if you don't mind, start with council comments. And, Sunday was a pretty sad day for our city as we had a vigil to remember the slain officers, Garvin and Reese. And a number of council members were there, and it was a very touching remembrance and a really beautiful distinctive plaque. It was placed in the 4th precinct. And, once again, at every formal meeting, we have a moment of silence to reflect upon all of those who have paid the ultimate price to keep our city and our nation safe. And we can never take this for granted. And, we're blessed, and I think it speaks to our police department and all public safety. This morning, Patrick, sent me a link that we were just, named the safest beach community in this nation. And, it takes a lot of time and sacrifice and commitment, to those. And when we talk about public safety, we talk about police, sheriff, we talk about fire, we talk about EMS and 911. And, it takes a real commitment. But once again, we continue to pray for the family members of these officers, and be assured we will once again remember them in perpetuity. Okay, Rosemary.
Last night I had one of my town hall meetings, and I know we're all having them, but I did want to we really had a great meeting, and a special shout out to the staff that came and helped with that, with Nancy Hellman and John Crawford, who's doing the parking. And he's only been with us 4 months, and he's already making an impact. And he did a really good job because people are very interested in parking, and they had a lot of questions that was beyond the resort parking program. And he didn't have all the answers because, he's been here a short time, but he handled it really, really well. And after it was over, when I got up after it, I said, look, we got to give him grace because he's only been here 4 months, and he got a huge round of applause. So, Patrick, you did a really good job in finding him. And I know all of y'all have probably done this, but I'm just going to say this so that the public can hear it. The new voters registration facility is unbelievable. I had no idea how gigantic it is. It's really, really big. And it's going to be a real change for people to go to this different location. I think it's good because and we all talked about this, that it's more in the heart of the population of the city. But I think it's going to be just different for people to get into the habit of going there. And it's not sort of off the road a little bit in that little HOA condo park. But it's just almost overwhelming to see how big it is, but it's going to house everything that needs to be housed and hopefully save us some money in rent and stuff everywhere else. But also, it's going to be very secure. The security there is absolutely amazing, so that people can feel really, really good that, we have paper ballots, and all those paper ballots are going to be safe and sound. So I just want to give a shout out to the council for putting the votes, the most important thing I think we do as a citizen, and we made this a priority, and then for the staff to get it all ready and prepared, because the there's always a vote coming up, and we're going to have some coming up really soon, like March 17th.
We're so blessed to have elections every year.
Almost, seems like almost every month.
Oh, my God, yeah. Okay, anybody else at this point? Amelia?
Yes, I do have, as you all know, it's been all Black History Month and so many events to attend. We did our last of the unveiling of the neighborhood signs, and I think this was one of the best we had. Literally, I asked how many different families came out, and we had 16 different family groups who live in this area in Great Neck. And it was interesting hearing their stories. And we had almost 50 come out on that rainy, snowy like day. And I'm pleased to say that the mayor has made all 3 of those unveilings, 3 Sundays in a row. Miss Rain of what we did SeaTac, we did Lick Smith, and this last one was Great Neck. And even though their council member wasn't there, we had council member Worth Remedy come out and represent. And he says, this may be a little bit near my border. Showing up, one person says, I know you. I live on Hawaiian Drive. The people want to see people out there very proud. And this specific area has a lot of history. Some of you may remember once I put out this self-guided in 2020, but there it talks about this group because it goes all the way down to Sea State Park, which is today First Landing Park, and how many years ago, it was built in 1930s, and they had 250,000 African Americans come to work in this area and build that park. And I can tell you, looking back at what we have, it says how an All-American Regiment Company 1371 constructed trails, built cabins, cleared the whole place with today, which we know as First Landing State Park. Although they were not allowed to actually come and use it, but it went through where there was protests in 1951 when they filed a suit. They closed the entire park down until later in 1955. After that, it reopened its trail in 1961 and its campground in 1962. So some of that, knowledge, and a lot of the people who lived there said to me, this all used to be wooded farmland. And now we have all these big homes and so forth there. But yet they were very proud. They told their story. We were there. I couldn't come over to the visual because we were there till 2:45, listening to different families. And it was almost like a reunion for them. And they really love to see the new unveiling of that. So we thank all of those who supported when I first came up with that. And the city went ahead to continue each year. I think we only have one more. But there's some behind the scenes people. We have Emily Archer. Are you around? Again, she was there at every one of these and helped oversee this with designs. We had others that we hadn't mentioned before, so I brought the program so I don't forget. But we have Paul Haynes, who was the local historian. We have the Office of Communications, who helped. We have Drew Langford, who helped pull things together from a writing standpoint. We also had Deacon William Barnett from the First Lynn Haven Baptist Church, and we had another group of people that came. The landscape designers, our landscape management team, Jennifer Carroll, creating the landscape design, and Wynn Nursery of Virginia, who handled the planting with such care. So all of these people, really, it takes a team, and we have a wonderful group of people and staff who take time to do all of these. Besides that, I tell you, on Thursday, over at Virginia Wesleyan University, they did a Black History program with students doing poetry. We had a wonderful singer, BJ. Some of you will know him from the Vibe area, playing the cello. We also had other speakers. I was one of the speakers, and we talk about dreams deferred, Black voices, Black excellence, and so forth. Had a nice turnout at the, what's the center called? On Virginia Wesleyan. We went through that. Then we had, where again?
Good.
At Good. Then they had Black authors in Norfolk to attend, then the walking trail out in Portsmouth. So you can see, it has been very, very busy for the year, but I think positive. And the last one, I hope you can come, Councilman Cummings. I hope maybe they've invited you at Great Neck Middle School. One of the projects that the VAACC put together were podcasts. And some of the kids, the middle school, they have an African-American group that they call You Belong. So tomorrow, I think it's from 4:15 to 5:30, they're doing a skit and then having a panel, especially to talk about the Great Neck area. So it's really, bringing a lot of interest around each community to see how this has pulled things together, and I'm looking forward to attending that. Then we can rest.
Well, I typically do my schedule a year in advance. And it would be nice if somebody would say, we're thinking about doing this event on a certain day, are you available, what days are you available?
Yes.
And it's also nice to get more than 24 hours notice to events. It helps, with the attendance.
I didn't know that. And listen, also tomorrow, I believe at 5 o'clock in Westminster, Canterbury, there's going to be Rosemary.
I also want to give a shout out to our own Dr. Amelia Ross Hammond.
Oh.
She made the newspaper top of the fold today for her map of the and guidebook for the Regional Black History Month, Black History areas.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting. It was really nice to read about that this morning.
Thank you so much.
Okay, really quick, just wanted to kick off March, even though this is February, got to redeem myself. So we're going to be District 7 and community members in District 7 are going to be honoring the legendary Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker in the month of March. And why this is so amazing to us is that his kids live right behind me, right? His ex-wife Dee, they live there as well. And so March 19th, we're going to be, it's going to be a star-studded event. It is really to bring awareness to the after-school program that is in your district, in Powerhouse. It's called Powerhouse Gym, and that's where Sweet Pea Whitaker and his kids, and they have a thriving after-school program that we're really bringing attention. So it really is, Sweet Pea Whitaker kids live in District 7, but they work in District 10. And so we're excited because we've got a named boxer who's going to be flying out for a couple of hours to spend time here in Virginia Beach, pro bono, by the way. And that is none other than heavyweight champion of the world, Evander Holyfield.
All right. Yeah.
I was able to use my gift of gab. and so he said, usually they charge, for having these celebrities come. But I said, it really is to highlight Powerhouse Gym, which Coach Twan, who is the nephew of Sweet Pea Whitaker, is in a wheelchair. He's paralyzed. And so he's done everything he could to keep the doors open. And so Powerhouse Gym, the doors are financially, we're almost ready to close, and yet you've got these after-school kids coming there to learn the disciplines of boxing. So it's going to be a star-studded event. I just want to highlight and send out a headliner. Mama Ali, which is Ali's second wife, is going to be in town too, really to highlight their after-school program. But I just want to tell you guys that Virginia Beach, get ready. Evander Holyfield is coming here March 19th for a couple of hours. So I'll give you more of that information. And Mayor, I think we are requesting for you to just say a couple of words.
Yeah, I think I'm traveling that day with the England thing, but yeah, I'll let you know. We'll check our itinerary.
Okay.
Okay, Michael?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, it's never a slow or dull day at City Hall. I just want to share that the mayor and I had the privilege of meeting with the Italian Consul General for our region this morning, affirming our shared commitment to serving everyone in our city, including people who are Italian citizens and Italian Americans who live in Virginia Beach, make Virginia Beach home, as well as the importance of how local relationships influence international relationships. And we affirmed our shared commitment to the values that we share, such as defense, democracy, rule of law, individual liberty and freedoms, and our transatlantic partnership. So it was very good. Thank you, Mayor, for joining that conversation. And we're so pleased to welcome them here. That's really all.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. You did a great job with those folks. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, you forgot about the public.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was struggling to remember there was another one too, but I wasn't. Thank you for reminding me. Also, on Monday morning, yesterday morning, a number of us gathered to express our appreciation to the public works professionals who responded to the graffiti incident that occurred at the crosswalk at 19th and Cypress on December 23rd, just before the holidays were starting. Those professionals, a team of them responded on a cold day right before the holidays, and they worked diligently to ensure that the hateful, discriminatory graffiti that existed at that crosswalk was removed. They did so hours past their assigned shift ended, which I think is a reflection of their dedication to the service of our community. And I don't think it would have mattered what was written on there or where it was located. Those folks knew that something wrong had occurred, something that was hurtful to many people, and as our professional staff always does, they responded accordingly, and they made sure that graffiti was removed, even before they went home to their families during the holiday season. I also want to give a shout out and a recognition to Kate Pittman and the Vibe Creative District, not only for organizing that event and for initiating that thoughtful moment of gratitude, but also for her outstanding visionary leadership at the Vibe and conceptualizing creative interpretations that bring people together and unite people. And that's what we experience at 19th and Cypress, and that's what the Vibe Creative District does. And also that's what the power of creative expression can do, is unite people, helping create a sense of place and a home, and connect us more fully with not only our unique human experiences, but the people and the community around us. And I think that was all well on display, so thank you for reminding me.
I do have one last that I forgot. We were featured in for Black History Month, the VAACC in USA Today special edition. Not to mention that.
No, we all got a lot to be proud of, folks. Yes. Okay. At this point, the chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to exemptions from open meetings allowed by section 2.23711A Code Virginia, as amended for the following purposes: publicly held property, discussions or considerations, acquisitions of property for public purpose, or disposition of public property, where a discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of public body pursuant to section 2.23711A3, and that's District 2, District 5, public contract, discussions award a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and discussions of terms of scope of such contract where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.23711A29, and that would be Project Pelican. And then personnel matters, discussions, consideration, or interviews of the prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to section 2.23711A1, and that's council appointees, boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Councilmember Belushi?
Aye.
Councilmember Hudson?
Aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Remick?
Aye.
Councilmember Montana?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Aye. Councilmember Shulman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
11.
Okay, we're recessed at the close. Do we need a? I have a motion to approve the closed session. So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Belushi?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Hudson?
Aye.
Councilmember Deputy Green?
Aye.
Councilmember Remick?
Aye.
Councilmember Montana?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse? Councilmember Shulman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
Well, so we're gonna-
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
9-0, you certify the closed session. The closed session.
Thank you all. Great meeting,
Perfecto.
folks. Have a good evening.